Hey. Hello and welcome to this conference. It's going to be an amazing time. We're super excited about everything that's going to happen at this conference. All the speakers are ready. All the speakers are well-equipped people, and we're just excited. We're starting in about 2 minutes, so get yourself ready, get comfortable. Get yourself in a comfortable space, get your pen, your book, everything you need to take notes with. Make sure your internet is connected and just get ready to be enlightened and enjoy yourself at this conference. All right, without further ado, we're starting officially. Welcome to the Child Development Conference. It's our honor and privilege to have this virtual conference with you here, and we're super excited for everything that is going to happen, everything we're going to learn at this conference. This conference is put together by Beyond the Classroom Foundation in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. Right, today we're going to be addressing the contemporary issues on children's total development, and our theme for the conference is safeguarding and child protection, our collective responsibility. My name is Bulugi Stephen. I am a lawyer, a media professional, a corporate compare, co-founder of the Family Roundtable, and your host. So I hope you're ready to see this face for some time today. As you join, just let us know where you're joining us from, your name, where you're joining us from in the world, how you heard about this conference. We just want to see where you are and just connect with you. So feel free to engage in the comments. Feel free to just let us know, engage with the speakers, engage with everyone as we go on the ride for today. Okay. I'm waiting to see where you're joining us from. It's good to see you all. It's good to see where you're joining from. It's good to see how you heard about the conference. It's just amazing. You can do well to share this with somebody, share the link with somebody, invite somebody, whether parents, teachers, guardians. It's super important that we all take responsibility for the protection and safeguarding of children. Remember that no matter how well we train our own children, if they're exposed to other children that are not, well educated and equipped, they're still at harm or at risk of harm. So it's very important that we share this with people around us so that we're all responsible. All right, I can see people joining from Lagos. I can see some people in Abuja. It's so awesome to see everyone joining us. As we go on, as our opening prayer, we're going to be reading the second stanza of our national anthem. As we all know, it's a prayer, and we're going to be saying that prayer. I'm sure you know it. We're going to say that prayer together, and then we kick off with the rest of the program. All right. Don't be tempted to sing it, but I mean, if you want to sing it, you also can. So the second stanza of our national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, and help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true. Great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Amen. Amen and amen. I still see your comments. I still see where you're joining us from. Looks like we have more people from Lagos and Abuja. I'm sure that the others are coming on soon. Okay. So we have, like I said, we have 5 speakers that will be sharing from different angles on how we can keep our children safe and protect them. But before we go into that, we're going to be hearing from the founder of Beyond the Classroom Foundation, I mean the organizers of this conference, Mrs. Kasham Raquel Daniel. This is Raquel Kasham Daniel, yes. So she's going to come in up shortly with her opening remark. But before we hear from her, I would like to read her profile so that we know her a little more. I'm sure some of us already know her, but you know, it's always good to hear about people from their written profile. So let's hear about Raquel Kasham Daniel. She is a social entrepreneur, educator, and author with experience in social development, community mobilization, development strategy, managing and leading multidisciplinary teams. She's the founder of the Beyond the Classroom Foundation and the co-founder of Bambini Africa. Raquel works in marginalized communities across Nigeria, focusing on education for children and ensuring children enroll, stay, excel, and graduate from primary schools. She's a firm believer in the power of educating children to cultivate their character while creating awareness for them from an early age. She focuses her work on books and other resources for children and young adults. With over 10 children's books, Raquel's goal is to create resources that will enable parents and educators nurture cultured, mindful, compassionate, kind, socially, and emotionally aware children. So to welcome us officially, please let's celebrate Mrs. Raquel Kasham Daniel.
Good day, everyone. It's good morning from Abuja, Nigeria. I'm not sure where you're tuning in from, but it's good afternoon, good afternoon. If it's good evening, good evening. But it's good afternoon from Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Raquel Daniel, as introduced. I'm the founder of Beyond the Classroom, and I'm really pleased to be here. I'll quickly want to just run us through why we're here today before I talk about how we all should be safety savvy. So I'll talk about the Child Development Conference and why we started the Child Development Conference. For us at Beyond the Classroom, we believe that children are the core of the work that we do. And that's how we've been doing this for 12 years. This is our 13th year. And we've done so much work with children in marginalized communities, in conflict-affected communities, focusing on projects that are targeted at health and safety for children also. So to deepen our work that we've been doing over the years, what we decided to do is to start some sort of conversation around child development. For us, we believe that the total welfare of a child is very, very important. So just focusing on education is not enough, that the total welfare of the child is important. And that's the aim of this conference. So we're trying to do this conference is bring together parents, teachers, educators, students, everyone that works with children, nonprofits, to talk about basic, what's it called, areas that affect children. And so one of the areas we're talking about during the conference last day is safety. That's what the total theme is, safety. But some of the areas we're talking about over the conference will be around health, education, welfare, safety, rights, and so on and so forth. Our maiden edition of the conference, which is this conference, yay, is sponsored by the MasterCard Foundation. And we're currently running the Safety Savvy Project, which this conference is a part of. Our goal is to have these conversations, have notable people come together and talk about different areas that they've been working with children on. So around safety in school, around safety for nonprofits, safety for parents, around safety, even for understanding what safeguarding and child protection is, because so many people do not understand what safety and safeguarding and child protection is. And so a lot of people ask why safeguarding and why child protection. And I like to say also here is that safeguarding and child protection is everyone's responsibility. So I hope that by the end of this conference, you would not you will see a child on the road who needs to cross the road, and you will help the child cross because you know that that child might be at risk of being hit by a car, and it's your responsibility as an adult to help the child. We hope that you will be able to walk into a building, and first thing you ask about is if there's a muster point. Also, how can you safeguard people or children in the building? Or if you work for a non-profit, you ask questions regarding how can my team, my volunteers be trained on safety and safeguarding. We'll be hearing from people who had worked with non-profits and how it's important that non-profits and organizations working with children need to understand safety and safeguarding. So all these are the conversations we'll be having today, and listening to notable speakers talk about these areas. And then we're taking the conversation further to next week. We call it an extended conference, which will be 30 minutes recording and streamed on YouTube on different areas. So we're covering areas around water safety, we're covering area around home safety, we're covering area around road safety, also for children. We're covering area around fire safety for children. So all those areas we're going to cover them, the cyber safety and online safety for children. What do you know about all these areas of safety for children? So just to show you how robust the conversation is going to be starting today till next week. So if you're tuning in, don't forget to share this link with everyone that you know, and let them join us and have a good time. Thank you. Okay, so I'm also a guest speaker. I almost forgot that. And so I'm witness. I'll be talking about being safety savvy. How do we become safety savvy? And it's very important because Beyond the Classroom was designing the Safety Savvy project. It was core for us because we were working with children for so many years. And what we realized is that when COVID struck, a lot of our kids couldn't learn well. And one of the 10 core values for us at Beyond the Classroom, which are like points at which we work, the number 10 is that children cannot learn well if they are not safe. And that was what drew us to design the Safety Savvy project. And the project was first focused on body safety for children. Early in the year, we worked on body safety for children in 2 schools. And what we did was to teach the children about their bodies, about kidnapping, what to do if they're alone, talking to strangers, and all sorts. And it was an amazing project. So that this project is an offshoot of that project. And we realized that we could do more with the children. So we started teaching children how they can become safety savvy. And one of the ways you can become safety savvy is one, by actually being reading books on safety. And you don't have to be a parent to learn about safety for children, because wherever you are, you always work with children in every area of your life. So you either have a niece, a nephew, cousins, or neighbors, or you work in a school or building, or your colleagues have children. You always come in contact with children, even at malls, the supermarkets. And so how do you become safety savvy? First is for you to read books that talk about safety for children. And they have so many books, books on swimming safety for children, book on water safety for children, fire safety, even understanding the need for fire drills at home. That's one way you can become safety savvy. Another way is actually to take safety and safeguarding courses online. The UNICEF has a safety and safeguarding course on the Agora platform. You can check that online and take that course. It will help you understand how you can become safety savvy. And for us, when someone says they are safety savvy at Beyond the Classroom, we're saying that the person is conscious, the person is aware, and the person is deliberate about dangers that are around them in order to keep themselves and those around them safe. So if you want to be that person, the first thing, like I said, is to read books. Second thing is to take an online course. And if you even go on Coursera, there are so many online courses on safety and safeguarding for children, and even in workplace. So we are talking about child development here, but the truth is, for most adults, they hurt children because they've been hurt. So adults also need to understand their own safeguarding policies and practices in their workplaces. So what are the safeguarding policies in your workplace? So what can you do? Take online courses in the workplace. Another thing you can do is is, if you're a HR professional, for instance, or you have an organization, is to put in place safeguarding policies for your staff and have them read those policies and have them understand those policies and have them do what they ought to do to keep to those policies and practices in your workplace. And so we had a training a couple of weeks ago on the Safety Savvy program. We were talking to teachers, and we had some security men come into the building into the training, and we asked them, what would you do if there was chaos outside or there was a riot or something outside? And most of the security men didn't give us the real safety drill that they would have taken. Some knew, but many didn't. And that's actually a security breach for the school, because if there was rioting or there was chaos outside, that security man would first run out, check what's happening before coming in. And for all we care, those children would be hurt. So what we're going to do is ensure that we talk to our HR professionals. If you're in the workplace, talk to your HR managers, talk to your boss, ensure that you have policies in place that keeps you safe and safeguards you as a staff in the school. So I'm going to remember again, one is to read books on safety. There are so many. You can even buy them for your children. There's some for children as young as 3 years old. You can find safety books for children that are about 3. There are some books also for adults on safety. So when, for instance, you are building a pool in your house, what do you need to put in place to ensure that the pool is safe? And the barricades you need to put, the specification, all that. You can buy these books and read them. So it's not just for the safety of the children, but also adults can trip and fall into pools and get hurt. So all these are things that you need to do. So read books, focus books that's age appropriate, buy the books for your children, and then take online courses, ensure that it's included in your policies at work. If it's not included in your policies, the first thing you're doing is find out what can we do to ensure that we have that policy in place. And another way for you to be safety savvy as a parent is when you go to enroll your children in a school, for instance, you start to ask questions about safety. What safeguarding policies are here in this school to keep our children safe? How does the playground look like? So these are ways that you can be safety savvy. You can be a safety savvy parent, a safety savvy aunt, a safety savvy uncle, a safety savvy worker, a safety savvy neighbor. You know, because you have this understanding, you're able to look out for people and children around you. So don't forget, read books. So there are also podcasts. A lot of people do podcasts around safety and safeguarding for workplaces, for children, for sports. You can read those, learn road safety signs. A lot of people don't know the road safety signs. A lot of people are driving without knowledge of the road safety signs. Read those, learn them, understand them. Some of them are universal, but some could be country specific. So you could check them out and understand those ones. I recall very well that once I told someone that, oh, you could turn on red, and the person said, oh, it's only in Nigeria that you can do that. So maybe that's not a universal road safety, what's it called, rule. It might just be what's it called, a national road safety rule. So you have to learn all those also. That helps you to become safety savvy. So there are a million and one ways you can become safety savvy by just paying attention, reading books, taking online courses, listening to podcasts, and just being attentive to your surrounding. So yeah, so ways to become safety savvy. And there are different areas that you can become safety savvy. I mentioned earlier you can become safety savvy as a parent. You're cautious about the equipment that you leave around your house so that your kids don't get hurt. You're conscious about the books your children read, because then you're safety conscious. You're even as an uncle and as an aunt, when you're buying toys, you're looking at safety and age appropriate toys for children. I know someone who mentioned that she doesn't buy guns, toy guns for her children, because she just feels like it's not safe that the children start to hold guns, even if they're toy guns at that age. For her, that's a safety measure that she has put in place for her family. So it could be all that. So there are so many safety measures. As little as seatbelt, wearing seatbelts in cars are ways that you can become safety savvy. Just knowledge of knowing that children need to wear seatbelts if they're below 12 in cars, that they're sitting at the back, especially because children that are below 12 have to sit at the back. A lot of people don't know that. Babies can't sit in front. And so all those things are that you need to know and you need to be aware of. And when you do know, you also have to tell others about it. And we believe strongly that if you have knowledge and it's not shared, then it's not knowledge gained, because then it is not shared. So you have to share it so that you're able to get more knowledge. So teach other people, you have a little training, no matter what the training is about, bring in safety, because it's important and everyone is safe. So yeah, I think I've covered basics, all that I want to talk about becoming safety savvy. And I'll be back soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Daniel, for that, for the welcome, first of all, and then for educating us on, being safety savvy. From what she said, I picked up a few things, a number of things actually. I can't share all, obviously, but she talked about this being about the total development of the child. So being safety savvy is not just one aspect of being a child, but it's the total development of the child. It's about safeguarding and protecting children around you, and it's everybody's responsibility. We may have the tendency to think, oh, I'm not a parent yet, I don't have a child yet, so this is none of my business. But as long as there are children in the world, child protection, safeguarding and child protection is your responsibility. And the more we learn to take responsibility for all of the children around us, whether we know them or not, you see a random child, like she said, try to cross the road, your neighbor's child, your colleague's child, we are playing our part in making the world a better place by keeping it safe for the children. She talked about things that we can do, reading books about it. I have, taken responsibility to make sure I read at least one book before the end of this year that teaches me about children and, keeping them safe, because it's very important. And she talked about taking courses online. There's so many courses that we can take. Everyone should be safety savvy. And when she was talking about road safety signs, it hit me because honestly, a lot of us, even people that have been driving over a decade, there are still signs that we may not know. And that does not show us to be very responsible adults. So we must take it, one homework for us leaving this place, make sure you check that you know your road safety signs. And I know we'll be having an expert on that, talking about that very soon. So please make sure you're here. Yeah, and when she talked about guns for children and, not allowing your children play with guns, that's actually very important. I don't know why we've normalized that, but I mean, so many takeaway points. And we will be moving to our first speaker very soon. We'll be moving to our first speaker very soon. But before we go into that, I would like to just bring Mrs. Daniel back, bring Raquel back, and just ask her a question, because I mean, some things that she has said has triggered questions in my heart and made me aware of things that I didn't know. So I just wanted to ask her, I want to ask her, and if I think I can take one question from anybody here also after I ask my question, what triggered this passion to safeguard children in her? And was it being a parent? Was it a particular incident? What was it that exactly triggered this passion for safeguarding children? And if you have a question for her, and maybe I'll be able to take one or two, you can just put it in, and we would see if we have the time for her to take the question. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ogi, for that question. So it's funny because I get asked that question a lot of times. A lot of people want to know why I work with children or why safety. So safety, because we believe that at Beyond the Class, one of our values, or the pinpoint that we work on, is that children cannot learn well if they don't feel safe, or they are hungry, or they won't learn well if they don't have the right learning environment. And so because of that, we try to design projects that are targeted at different areas of children, their lives. So health, hygiene, name it, every area of their lives. And so at the beginning of the year, we started to hear cases of children at the camp where we work at IDP camps who were molested. Some children were raped, and some of the girls didn't even know who the father of their children were. And so it was heartbreaking. And so we also realized that even the boys were abused. So it wasn't just a girl problem. So it wasn't I have to protect my girl child. Even the boys were abused. And so what we decided to do was have like a focus group discussion with the children and the parents, asking them questions around, how could we have kept them safe? What could we have done to keep them safe, and one of the conversations that we had was they didn't have the knowledge of safety. So most of them, the parents said they left their children with this predators that hurt their girls or their boys, and they didn't know any better. So we said to ask, so if we taught you ways to keep your children safe, would that be helpful? And most of the parents said yes. And so what we also had was a language barrier, where we had to do that focus group discussions in Hausa language, but then the materials we had were in English. So we now have to get them translated so that the parents could understand what we're trying to teach. And we realized that the children that spend more time in school than they spend with their parents. And so during the design of that project, we decided to expand it to include parents so that to include teachers, I beg your pardon, because we know that if children spend a lot more time with teachers, then their teachers should also understand what is happening with them. And so that was how the project started. And it went beyond what we initially expected, because for us, what we wanted to do was just educate the children and their parents, and then I included the teachers, and then from the teachers, the parent-teacher association. So the parent PTA in the school got involved, and then the community leaders also got involved. And then we saw that it was making an impact. So the children will say, oh, we meet the children after a while, and they tell us stuff like, oh, now I know that I'm not supposed to be outside at XYZ time of the day, or when I have to go out and it's dark, I can wear certain type of clothes, because color of clothing, because they know that if I wear a dark clothing and something happens, people won't see me at night, or if I get missing or something, or I get hurt, someone will not see me, or a car can hit me. The kids started to understand, and so that led us to produce the safety, the book on body safety, that further buttressed the points for the kids. And so we used the book, and we did the training for our volunteers, we did training for our teachers, we did training for our community leaders, and it was amazing. And so that's how the project just went on and on and on until the end of the year. So throughout this year, I've been working on safety projects. So from the one in the beginning of the year, and now we're wrapping the year with a safety project. And we've seen that because children feel safe, they're able to stay in school because they feel empowered. They now have the relevant information they need to keep themselves, the families, and their loved ones safe, especially themselves. So yes, I hope I answered that question, Mrs. B.
Okay, that's a very interesting answer. That's a very interesting answer. And, it just brings to light the fact that there is a need and there are people that have the answers for these needs. So look around you. While we're all learning how to be safety savvy in whatever area we found ourselves in, it's also important that you look around you to see what problems are around you, that you can also be a source of solution or join to bring about the solution to it. She talked about language barrier, especially if you live in, Nigeria, where we are. There's so many languages, and you find that you're educating children in one, but it looks like, there's just so much. There's just so much. So you can see that there is work. Seeing our comments, I'm enjoying seeing their interaction here. I can see people are excited to be learning about child safety. Ayomide says children cannot learn when they are not safe. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Only when they are safe, when they are, not just when they are safe, but also when they feel safe. When you don't feel that sense of safety, it's hard to concentrate and learn. Olamide says child protection, safeguarding is the responsibility of everyone. Absolutely. Safe learning environment promotes fast learning, says Ademola. Awesome. Yes, yes, yes. So I like that we are engaging in the comments. Please feel free to continue to engage in the comments. Feel free to share this with somebody, a parent that you know, a teacher, and I mean anybody else, because like we have established, it is everybody's business to keep children safe. All right, so before we go to our next speaker, I gave us opportunity to ask Raquel any other question. I can't see any question in the comments, so I want to assume that we don't have questions. I might be wrong. Please, if you still have questions for her before we let her rest for a bit, please drop them in the comment section and I will bring her up to answer the question. But I mean, before that comes up, I want you to share with me in the comments, maybe an experience you've had with children or where you learned about safety the most. Let me know where you learned about safety the most. Was it in school? Was it at home? Was it in church? Was it in a religious gathering? Just let me know where you learned. We're talking about everybody's responsibility, but want to know where from our own experience we learned the most about safety. Personally, I think I learned the most from the house, from when I was growing up, parents saying, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that. And being a parent myself now, I'm trying to ensure, starting with my child and going outward, that there are boundaries. Safety often includes boundaries, to make sure, oh, this is what you can do, this is how far you can go, this is how far you can't go, and just keeping them safe. So I'm waiting to see about you, where you learned about safety the most in your own experience. Let me know in the comments before we move on to our next speaker, where you learned about safety the most. All right. Sorry for that short break. We had to just sort out a few things on this end, but I've seen your comments. I'm seeing your comments about where you learned about being safety savvy, and it's just amazing to see. Most of us are saying that we learned about it from the home, which is obviously very, very important. We can't overemphasize how important it is to learn about safety, from the home. Without wasting any more time, we're going to move to our first speaker session. And I'm going to be reading his bio before I bring him up. So let's get ready to have an amazing session with Mr. Taiwo Akinlami. This is his bio. Taiwo Akinlami is a public interest and social development legal practitioner, an ethicist, and arguably Africa's doyen of the field of child safeguarding and protection and family strengthening. In his capacity as monitoring and evaluation expert, content and curriculum developer, and consultant, Akinlami has reached over 10 million children, primary and secondary parents, and has worked with over 250 leading national and international organizations. He owns the intellectual property of over 60 registered products, books, and services, including Safe for Children. He also leads consistent media campaigns, making appearances on major media across the world, including the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC. We're super excited to have you with us, sir, and he's going to be taking the topic Introduction to Safeguarding and Child Protection. Without further ado, welcome and thank you for being here, Mr. Akinlami. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you for that, for the work that you are doing. I want to salute the commitment of Ms. Raquel. I've known her for many years, and she has been consistent, committed to the cause of children, beginning from not only saying what is possible, but doing what is possible. In our world today, many people can say what is possible, and that is an evil in itself. The evil we are used to is the evil of somebody not saying what is possible. But there's another evil, which is saying what is possible without demonstrating what is possible. What Raquel has been able to do is to move from not saying what is possible to saying what is possible and beginning to do what is possible. She has also demonstrated that it's not about what you have in your hand, it's about what you have in your heart. Because she set out at a time when she herself needed help, began to reach out to children, who needed help. And from that time onward, she has begun to demonstrate the need to protect our children, to provide for them, to meet them at the point of their need. So I'm not surprised at what she's doing today. I would have been surprised if she's not doing it. So I salute you, Ms. Raquel, for the great work that you are doing. I want to salute your entire team, everybody that has supported today's program. I salute you. You're on the right track. You are pursuing the right course. And when we do this kind of work, only God can reward you. And when I say only God can reward you, it's not a resignation to faith. It's not that only God will reward you. No. When God rewards, people see the manifestation of the reward. It's not that God is the greatest rewarder. God is the biggest employer of labor in the world, and is the greatest, is the highest rewarder in the world. Nobody rewards like God. As a matter of fact, until God rewards you, you have not been rewarded. And that is the truth. So this morning, I want to talk about introduction to child safeguarding and protection. Introduction to child safeguarding and protection. It is important for me to quickly note that when we talk about safeguarding and we talk about protection, a lot of times those terminologies are interchangeably used. Well, that can be excused once in a while, maybe for the purpose of, for a working purpose. but for effective purpose, for achieving maximum result, they must be differentiated. Safeguarding is not protection. Protection is not safeguarding. One comes before the other. As a matter of fact, one cannot exist without the other. As a matter of fact, one is a foundation for the other. I've seen many people who are concerned about protecting children who are not interested in safeguarding, forgetting that the engine room of protection is safeguarding. And what exactly do we mean when we talk about child safeguarding? We are talking about setting an agenda to protect children, to anticipate the needs of children, to anticipate the threats to them, to now make adequate preparation in terms of structure, in terms of system, to mitigate these threats and beware before they arise, to forestall or mitigate this threat well before they arise. So to protect, to safeguard is to put in place, is to anticipate. As a matter of fact, the foundation of protection is safeguarding. Protection is merely safeguarding in action. If there's no safeguarding, there can be protection. There has to be a plan. There has to be a way we have envisaged that things will be done. There has to be, when you gather children, anywhere you gather children, you have to think ahead. What are the possible threats? What are the possible needs of these children to make adequate preparation? And when I'm talking about preparation, I'm not talking about preparation that is subject to whims and caprices of the person making it. I'm talking about preparation that is predicated upon the needs of these children. What are the needs of children? What are the threats to them? Now, it is important to also know that the needs of children are dynamic in nature, very dynamic. And the threat to children are also dynamic in nature, because we live in a world that is volatile. We live in a world that is changing by the day. And so by virtue of that, you have to consistently review what are the needs of children. You have to consistently review what are the threats to children. It has to be reviewed, because you cannot, for example, many years ago, there was nothing like children being dubbed witches. It wasn't part of concerns, threats to children, until something happened in Akwa Ibom State, when children were being dubbed witches and they were being killed. 13 inches nail were being driven into the skull, into the temple of children. Then that became a major issue. That in itself threw up another issue, which was the fact that some people came to say that they wanted to help these children. It was now found that some of the people who came to help the children, including people from the West, including people who were supposed to have been trained in being able to do this, they were found, one of them was found sexually molesting the children they were trying to rescue from being dubbed, who were being killed and being maimed for being dubbed witches. No, that threw up other issues. So what I'm saying in essence is that these are dynamic issues. The issues that children face today within the school system have since ballooned. Things are now different. Before, within the school system, you may not think about an attack on the school system. But today, you now find people coming to the schools within the school system to attack children, to kidnap them, and to take them away in droves. That has become another issue. So what I'm saying to you is that the heart of protecting children is safeguarding. As a matter of fact, it was not like that before. You know, many years ago, the thinking when it comes to protecting children was just to respond. Response was all that we did. We just responded. Something happened, we just respond, we just go there and do something. But people around the world began to think, I'm talking about child protection experts, child safeguarding experts, began to think that this approach cannot work. This idea of fire brigade approach of attending to matters that has to do with children cannot work, because it wasn't working. The best it was delivering was medicine after death. The best it was delivering is trying to ride a dead horse. The best it was delivering was trying to get to the scene of abuse after the abuse has been done, dusted, and cleaned up. And so the world began to think that this cannot be the way forward. The world began to think that there must be a better way forward. Then the world began to think about system approach to protecting children. That is where safeguarding comes in. And that is why organizations, nations, institutions began to set what they call safeguarding agenda. Safeguarding agenda. They began to set that. And what does that mean? It means that, as I've said before, you envisage the needs of children. You envisage the threat to them. You make adequate preparation to meet those needs and mitigate those threats according to global standard, well before they arise. Well before they arise. If a woman is pregnant, it is not the day her water breaks that she begins to run into ShopRite, begins to run into Walmart, begins to run into a place so that she can get baby things. All of those preparations are done before, because she knows one day, even if she's not aware, she will have been told, one day is coming. This experience of pregnancy is 9 months, or even before, sometimes before 9 months. And you will need to have some preparation, some baby things that you are going to need for the purpose of delivery. She will have been told, even if she was not aware, even if it was her first time. She cannot say, well, madam, how come you don't have anything? It's my first time. I didn't know. If she has done any kind of antenatal attention, if she has done any kind of going to the hospital, they will have been briefing her, madam, have you packed your bags? They will have been telling her from 6 months or earlier. So the point is, we are not ready for protection if we don't pay attention to safeguarding. And I see a lot today, people want to say, come and give us enlightenment talk about protection. I say, how is that going to work? Protection does not answer to enlightenment. It answers to safeguarding. Safeguarding answers to a system. What is a system? Coordinated approach. Coordinated approach, which takes into consideration every stakeholder, official or unofficial, in the life of the child, both within the family and secondary institutions that are responsible for taking care of children. Safeguarding does not answer to wishful thinking. It does not answer to enlightenment in terms of just enlightening people. When you enlighten people, when you don't know, when a situation arises, what you can do is what you can do. As Mr. Olakunle would say, what you can do is what you can do. What you cannot do, you cannot do. No matter how much knowledge you have, until your knowledge is mixed with skills, until your skills is mixed with attitude, until your attitude is upheld by a system, you are playing. It begins from knowledge. Knowledge is what to do. It goes to skills. Skills is how to do it. From skills, you move to attitude. Attitude is the fortitude to do that which you know you should do. Now, from fortitude, you go to system, because your knowledge, skill, and attitude are useless if there's no system to uphold it, because you will be the only man getting the work done. Please note, it is said child protection is everybody's job. Child safeguarding is everybody's job. I said to the point, at the point of reporting it, that's everybody's job. But when it comes to response, it is the job of trained eyes, trained ears, trained hands, supported by a system. In the family, there must be a system. In the schools, there must be a system. In the religious places of worship, there must be a system. In the community, there must be a system. In the homes, there must be a system. Everywhere we mention child protection, there must be a system. So because I have a limited time, let me dwell a bit on system, which is the point of safeguarding, because if we get safeguarding right, we get protection right. And I'll just mention briefly about the things we can do about protection. So when we talk about the system, as I've mentioned, the system is a coordinated approach. A system is a coordinated approach, envisaging the threats, envisaging the needs, envisaging the stakeholders, the role they need to play. In this regard, the child is one of the stakeholders. So when we put all of that together, we come together to say that this is what we envisage. This is what can happen. And this are the threats, these are the needs, and these are the things we need to do. If this happen here, from point A to point B to point C, from point D, this is what we do. So that when something happens, one, there's no pandemonium, there's no crisis. People know what to do. If a child begins to choke in a school, you don't begin to pour anointing oil and say, okay, begin, because I've seen that done. A woman giving a child anointing oil to drink in a school in Lagos because the child fainted, and instead of thinking about CPR, instead of considering first aid and all of that, they were pouring oil on the child. That was not supposed to be so. It was because there's no system. It's because there's no system in place. Now, after you have identified your system, the system is like a spirit. It cannot be seen. The system must be codified into policies. The system must be codified into a policy. In the family, you need a policy. Outside in the school, you need a policy. Policy is not only talking about schools or institutions. Family is also a private institution that needs policy. So what do? You have in place a policy from a system. A system is intangible, it cannot be seen, but the system have envisaged the role of people. What we need to do from point A to point Z, the system has envisaged all of that. From there, we move to policy. What is a policy? A policy is a statement of will. It's a statement of will predicated on the dominant value system of those who drafted it to govern their affairs. A statement of will. It's not a statement of wish. It's not something we just put together. And when we put it together, we put it in the cooler and we put ice block in the office of the headmaster, in the office of the headmistress, in the principal's office, or in the bedroom of the father or the mother, in the trinket box. We just put the protection policy there and we lock it up so that nobody can see it. That is no more a policy. That is an antic. But when you talk about a policy, it's a statement of will. It's an active statement. It's a statement that I've said, this is what we are going to do. And it has now been documented. It is no more in the arena of conjecture. It's no more esoteric. It's something you can see. And that is why somebody said, a short pencil is better than long memory. So when you say, I want to protect children, please, in your family, what is your policy? Do you have a system? Do you have a policy? Now, thirdly, your system becomes a policy. Your policy must be broken down into processes. What is processes? Processes is policy in action. Okay, this is what we need to do. How do we do it? What are the forms? How do we report abuse? Who do we report to? Who do we report to first? Who do we go to first? Processes. Processes. Processes is reducing policy into actionable moments, actionable things that can be done. Then when you are broken, you move, I'm talking about safeguarding answers to system. From system, you move to policy. From policy, you move to processes. Then from processes, you move to training. You move to training. How do people use this thing? Because they have to be taught. That's why we say in our organization, enlightenment is superior to enforcement. Enlightenment is superior to enforcement. So from your policy, you move to processes. From processes, you move to training. Training is at the heart, but training is not the beginning. People invite me, come and train us on child protection. I said, do you have a policy? They said they don't have. And you don't have a policy, you don't have a system. I said, you just want us to come and encourage our teacher. I said, I don't do it. I don't do it anymore. I used to do it. But today, I don't do it anymore. I don't run any training for any organization, any institution that is not ready to invest in policy, invest in system, invest in processes. I don't do it anymore. I tell them, I don't do it. If you want me to just come and enlighten you, I can do that. Now, it's lucrative for me to do it. I mean, I just turned out a school, last week. I said I cannot. You have a policy you don't have. You don't have a system you don't have. You just want me to come and talk. Now, I'm not going to do that. You want me to come and talk to your people for one day. I'm not going to do that. Now, the fees for me is high. For the venture for me It's like you are calling a doctor to come and perform operation without a theater. He said, let's just do it on the streets. And the doctor will now wear everything, go to Oshodi or go to Broad Street and put a patient there and be operating the patient. It can't work. If they take his license, it will be worth it. So today, you move from, even in the homes, you move from system to policy, policy to processes, processes to training. That's how it works. Anything short of that is a fraud, is a fluke. It does not protect anybody, not even a fly in the environment. It doesn't protect it. Because this is what we have found consistently. Even schools that have system in place, we are breathing down their neck to ensure that they run the system. Not to talk of people who don't have. Where do we go from here? In all that I've said, where we need to go is very simple. Is to become an evangelist of this conversation I'm having with you today. Unfortunately, in Africa, we are not people that are ruthlessly result-oriented. A lot of times we are interested in tokenism so that it could be said of me, I've done what I'm supposed to do. Meanwhile, it doesn't matter if the cases of children are improving or it's not improving. Now we take our children to school, even some of us who are interested in child protection or child safety, we take our children to school without sitting them down to say, excuse me, do you have a system in place where that system, is it codified into a policy? Is there processes? Have you trained your people on all of these things? Now, if you don't do that, we are just jiving. I don't even know the meaning of that word. I heard it from Pastor Kulejo, you're jiving, and I've been using it. We say you are just jiving. I don't know. I want to believe that it means that you are just joking. I picked a lot of vocabulary from him. We've been together for so many years. Say, dear brother and mentor. So where do I round up now? So what do we protect children from? So let me speak to that for, I think I have like 6 minutes more. Let me speak to what we protect children from. We protect children from 4 kinds of abuse, majorly. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. And that sexual abuse is a symposium discussion for another day. I don't think I can dwell on it. Sexual abuse is massive. I think it's the greatest onslaught today on the destiny of children, sexual abuse. And there are other forms of abuse, but sex has become a weapon. It's been weaponized against children, even against some adults. So it's something we need to think about because even what we teach our children that we call sexuality education, I've been seeing a lot of people flying around saying that we need to do sexuality education. I'm asking, what is sexuality education? Is it telling children that there's something called private part, public part, which is which may be the foundation? But we have since said that every part of the body of the child is private to the child. The child does not have private part, public part. Every part of the body of the child is private. If you want to learn more about that, I have a book on that. It's on Amazon. Every part of my body is private to me. We wrote it as a comic, and you can pick it up and learn what we are talking about there. As a matter of fact, that is the future which we have brought to the present of protecting children. Every part of the body of the child is private to the child. Good touch, bad touch, private part, public part is not a subject matter in sexuality education. It may be a subject matter in teaching children decency and all of that, but it's not a subject matter. That thing that we have made the central of our sexuality education is not a subject matter in sexuality education. Private part, public part is not. Good touch, bad touch is not. You can talk to decency and all of that, but when it comes to protecting children from sexual abuse, or even let's leave abuse, when it comes to helping children to be conscious of their sexuality, then the conversation is about every part of their body is private to them. We even have a song, it's on YouTube, on one of our channels on YouTube. Every part is private, it's a song. We did a song. And we're going to be leading that campaign very forcefully, very soon, where we're going to be calling attention to that. So this is my conclusion. Children did not write application to come to this world. Children were saved with God. Everything with God is saved if you believe in God. Those children were in the presence of God. They were having fun. But we went to write application. Some of us who did not have on time, we begged, we prayed, we ran around. We went through all kinds of medical intervention so that we can have. But when these children come to this world, they become our guests. The way we treat 1 hour, a guest we want to host for 1 hour, is better sometimes than the way we treat a guest that we invited that is going to be with us for a minimum of 18 years. That's when that guest is going to be with us. So what are we doing with them today? Children are persons. We need to understand that. Who is the person? A person has worth, made in the image and the likeness of God. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world today. Oh, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world today. All of his money cannot buy one child in a legal market. All of his money that he has put together cannot buy one child. That shows you the worth of a child. What shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Which means one soul of a person is more important to God than the whole world. I've spoken about the wealth of Jeff Bezos. The wealth of Jeff Bezos is infinitesimal to the wealth of the whole world. But God is saying that when you have a child, a soul, is more that when a person gains the whole world and loses his soul, it is not profit, it's a loss. That shows how God sees children. Secondly, a child is a thinking being, is a reasoning being. A child began to reason from the womb because you are not the one who told the child to turn when it is time for the child to begin to engage coming to this world. By nature, the child turns, and begin to engage. You are not the one who told the child to begin to cry when he's hungry. That is freedom of expression. The child begins to express himself. You don't even need to teach the child. As a matter of fact, you are the one trying to calm the child down, but the child is expressing. There's no child born recluse. There's no child born sanguine. No, there's no. Every child is born in the image and the likeness of God. They can do what God can do at any point in time. We are the one who introduce measures. We introduce all kinds of measures. We now make them into our own image, the image of our fear, the image of our intimidation, the image of our limitations, the image of our own conclusions. We now make them from the image of God. By the time they are arriving at adulthood, we have distorted human beings who have been distorted from the original image. Most of the people who are adults today, they are victims of their childhood, including me, victims of our childhood. So lastly, a child has the power of choice. Until we train all of that in a child, it's going to become a dysfunctional adult. Until a child knows I'm a person of what? That is a question of identity. Until the child knows that I have the power of choice, until the child knows that I'm a reasoning being, I can think. I'm a reasoning being, I can think. I'm not a fool. That I'm a child does not mean I'm an idiot. That I'm a child does not mean I'm less smarter than adult. I'm smarter for my age. As a matter of fact, some children are smarter than their parents and are smarter than everybody around them. But unfortunately, they are not allowed to breathe. Lastly, to know that a person has choice. That is a question of destiny, that I am in charge of my destiny. I need to be trained to be able to handle it. Until we retain all of that in children, we are going to raise victims. And that is why for me, child's right is nothing except it dovetails into safeguarding and protection. Because my right is useless if it cannot buy for me. If it cannot buy for me safeguarding, if it cannot buy for me protection, my protection is useless. My safeguarding is useless if it cannot buy for me childhood preservation. On this bus stop of childhood preservation, I stand. I've dedicated my life in the last 23 years, advocating, pontificating, fighting, shouting, building everything that I have. And I tell you today that I came from a background that was abusive. My father never had a conversation with me. He never sat me down to discuss with me to say, son, these are the things you should do, these are the things you should not do. My father never told me that. He died at the age of 82. We never had a conversation. I had lost my virginity at the age of 6. That's the year I started primary school. Because my mother would go to the market, leave me with a woman who was her neighbor. And this one would strip me naked, do with a 6 months old, a 6 years old, what a woman should do with a man. And that happened constantly for 2 years. I have been nicknamed devil, emotional abuse, when I was just 9 years old. My father wanted to kill me, would tie my hands, would tie my legs, strip me naked. and give me 6 rows of the cane. And that happened every Saturday, almost every Saturday. And we're living in face apartment in Nigeria, where everybody minded their business except gossip. Nobody was going to come to my rescue. And so I became an adult. At the age of 18, I became a dysfunctional adult. And I suffered delayed childhood for another 7 years until I became a Christian at the age of 27. At 27, I gave my life to Christ, and that was the beginning of the journey for me to make a difference. And as I began to know Christ, as I began to know God, God began to reveal to me that me that he created, but was not distorted. But you see, myself and God, we have been on that journey for the past 23 years, since 1997. It is still an ongoing journey till this morning. I have to be awake to know that God has a plan for my life different from the one that my parents wrote for me. Unfortunately, my parents were not evil. My parents were not evil. They were not evil people. They were people also who were living out their own childhood. And as I made up my mind, the buck must stop at my table. No child must be abused under my watch. No child must be abused under my watch. Every child that comes to me comes to a place of refuge. Every child I come into contact with comes to a place of refuge. So for me, it is not a professional commitment. It's a life commitment. So if you hear that I stopped doing what I'm doing right now, just know that I signed up for suicide. It will mean that I'm not grateful. It will mean that I'm not faithful. It will mean that I've forgotten my history and my destiny. And that is why my commitment when I speak this way is to see if I can transfer that spirit to all of my listeners. I do not address seminars. I'm a preacher. I call myself Oniwasu. I'm a preacher. I go around preaching the gospel of securing a friendly and protective environment for children. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't make it your ambition to change the world. What is a massive place? Where do you start from? I think you should focus on your continent. Don't even make it your ambition to change your continent. Africa? Where do you start from? Where do you start from? Where people who are being charged for criminal offenses in foreign countries are bidding to be your president. And it appears there's nothing anybody can do about it. Where do you start from? Nigeria. Nigeria, where do you start from? Don't focus on your state. Where do you start from? Don't focus on your local government. I mean, it's massive. You may not have a say. Don't focus on your streets. You are not even a landlord there. Even if you are, you don't even have time to attend meetings. Don't focus on your building. Don't focus on your bed. Don't focus on your bed space. You know, if I were in your shoes, that's what I did. I focused on myself. As I focused on myself, I saw my life changing right in my presence like this. I began to define change as an ever-present possibility for any human being ready to take responsibility. If I can change, anybody can change. I began to see change that way, an ever-present possibility for any human being who is ready to take responsibility. So you change. When you change, your bedroom will change. When your bedroom changes, your room will change. When your room changes, your building will change. When your building changes, your street will change. When your street changes, your local government will change. When your local government changes, your state will change. When your state changes, your country will change. When your country changes, your continent will change. When your continent changes, your world will change. That means you are the change the world has been waiting for. That's what Raquel did. Raquel knew that she was the change the world has been waiting for, and she started beyond the classroom, began to reach out to children, and today she has been able to reach our world. Today she's dining with kings and princesses because she recognized that it is not about the fact that I want to change the world. It's about changing myself. It's about starting from a Jerusalem so that I can go to the uttermost part of the world. How do you reach me? You can follow me on Instagram. Taiwo Akinlami Returns. My former account was taken down. I fought to get it and building another one. So you can follow me on Instagram, Taiwo Akinlami Returns. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Taiwo Akinlami. You can follow me on YouTube. You can follow my YouTube channel, Taiwo Akinlami YouTube channel. So how else? You can DM me. I will respond to you. What else? You can go to Amazon and pick up our books. As a matter of fact, I have a book which is titled Securing a Friendly and Protective Environment for Children Online Protection. When it has to do, it's 123 pages of research work. It's not, when you read it, you will know it's not conjecture. I think you can pick it up in that policy, in that book. We gave you, the uniqueness of that book, what I'm talking about it is that you have a template of a policy in that book, and you also have a template of a family constitution, because when it comes to family, we subsume child safeguarding and protection under family constitution. So in the family constitution addresses so many other things, but it now addresses the issue of what families can do to envisage safety of children and make provision for it. Thank you very much for having me. It's been my pleasure being with you. I can see Ugochi in the house. Ugochi, how you did? It's been a while. You are looking powerful as usual. God bless you. Good to see you. It's been a while. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Akinlabi. That was a...
Akinlami is my name.
Akinlami, apologies. Apologies, Mr. Akinlami. Thank you so much for that session. It was so powerful, so many things to take away. I was looking at the comment session. It was very engaging, everybody picking so many things, reminding us about the worth of children, reminding us that every part of our body is private. That was so good, because we haven't heard it like that. We like to differentiate between your private part and I don't know what else there is, but thank you for bringing it to our knowledge and reminding us that every part of our body is private, telling us about systems that need to be codified. There must be a safety system in place in our homes, in our schools, policies that are broken down to procedures. That was so good, because many times we come for conferences and pick up great ideologies and we will do better, we think, but then we don't break them down to action points and procedures that actually help us do better. You started with reminding us that threats to children are dynamic. The world is evolving. Things that were not threats to us while we were growing up are now threats to children right now. So we must keep, checking the safety procedures and policies in place and reviewing them. So much that you said in this session. And I'm sure everyone that is on this conference has taken a lot. Please, let's not forget to connect with him with the social media platforms that he gave us: LinkedIn, Instagram, Taiwo Akinlami Returns, his books on Amazon and YouTube. Thank you again, sir, for this session. We're so grateful and have been enlightened. And we're going to move on to the next session. The sessions for this conference, they have a flow that help us to just be better in theme for today's conference. And our speaker is already in the house. We're so excited to hear from Ugochi Obidiegwu. Before I bring her up, I'm going to tell you a little about her, reading her profile. I'm super excited and pumped to listen to her. So I'm going to read her profile and then we will bring her right up. Ugochi Obidiegwu is a social development strategist with a specialty in developing products, programs, and providing policy advisory on pressing development issues affecting African children and youth. Her major work pillars are ensuring child safety, reducing substance abuse in youth, and providing strategic direction for founders of social impact initiatives. She is the founder of a child safety social enterprise called The Safety Chick, and the author of a child safety book series published on Amazon and available in English and French. Remember, I think Raquel was speaking earlier about languages, so she's already starting with bilingual books, and I'm sure there will be other languages available soon. Ms. Gochi is also the co-creator of a COVID-19 online safety game for children and curator of a safety education game app. I like the idea of bringing it to them in form of a game. It engages them and they learn along the way. So she's going to be talking on becoming a safety savvy school. Please let's celebrate Ms. Ugochi Obidiegwu as she comes up. please celebrate her in the comments. Thank you very much for being here. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much to Raquel and Beyond the Classroom Foundation for inviting me to this conference. Thank you so much, Barrister Kilami. As usual, I always love listening to you. In fact, you've actually touched on something that is very important, which we're going to be talking about. You know, when you talked about policies first, before processes, and then training to ensure that the people actually know what it is that we're asking them to do. So thank you so much, sir. And thank you to all the organizers. Thank you everyone. Thank you to those in the comment section. So just in case you see me look this way, I'll be checking the comment section because there is one of the tasks on the slides that I need to get your own feedback before we move on. So yeah, thank you. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen so that we can start. This is what my screen looks like. Please confirm if you can see the presentation. Okay, let me reduce this window. All right, so please confirm you can see the screen. Anybody in the comments? Can you see? Okay, I can see it on YouTube. All right, so I've been tasked to speak on becoming a safety service school, and I have just 30 minutes. I can't do much in 30 minutes, but I'm going to try because there's so much, there is just so much to talk about, but I'm going to really try my best to see what we can do. So who am I? The host already just talked about some things about me. I lead the Safety Chick, the author of the Adventures of Mona Child Safety Storybook series. I convene the annual School Safety Summit where we bring educators and stakeholders together to do a knowledge transfer. It's almost like what is going on here today. And then founder of UGIP Foundation, a faith-based nonprofit, and strategist of safety education apps, because I've seen the power of apps to take the messaging that we're trying to put further. And of course, a TEDx speaker. So about us, our Child Safety Social Enterprise is basically about increasing safety consciousness and reducing preventable accidents. Statistics show that many of these accidents are actually preventable. It's just because we haven't put the right systems in place. What's our vision? We want to be the most innovative safety education brand for African children. And what is our mission? To reduce the rate of those accidents affecting them by creating these products and programs and providing active leadership and support. So this is why I need everybody in the comment section. Listen carefully. So Lucy enrolled in a new school. At the end of the term, she took the first position in class, beating the record of David, who had always been the class champion. David was not happy at all. The next term came and school resumed as usual. One day, during break period, Lucy was not in class. David took her water bottle, poured out the water in it, and put in the chemical he had taken from the school lab. Lucy came back to class and was about to drink from that water bottle when another student stopped her. The student had seen what David did and had also reported to the teacher. Based on this little story, what do you think went wrong? And what could have been done to prevent the situation of the girl actually wanting to drink before somebody else is stopping her in school? So I'll be looking through the comment section. Let's do this as quickly as possible. Remember, we have just 30 minutes and we have a lot of ground to cover. So what do you think? How could this have been done better? Because remember, nobody sends their child to school to die. I mean, if you send your child off in the morning, all your hugs and kisses, and the next time the school is calling you, they are telling you one funny story, you are not going to find it funny with them. Yeah, so what do you think could have been done to prevent this from happening? So I'm looking. If you are here on Zoom with me, you can also share. It's okay for you to also share. So what do you think? What could have been done differently? How could we have prevented this, So it seems like we're all booting. Today's Saturday. Oh, yes, it's Saturday, but it's Saturday morning for me. I'm the one that should be booting. You all are in the afternoon. At least the majority of you are in the afternoon. You shouldn't be booting right now. You should be ready, like Barrister Kilami fired us up, So Beyond the Classroom Foundation says this is a sad story. You know, funny thing is, this situation actually happened in a real school. So that's why it's one of the case studies I like to use when it actually happened. So Menela Peters is saying the teacher could have managed the situation better. Yes, that's a very good point, considering that a student already reported. So that means there is no system or quick response between when a report has been made and when action is taken. And remember that in a safety scenario, in a safety situation, time and knowledge is very, very important. If you have all the time in the world, but you do not have the knowledge to take the right action, let's say in the case of a child has drowned and you have no knowledge of CPR or what to even do, it's a problem. If you have all the knowledge in the world, but you do not have the time to take action, it's also a problem. So this teacher was informed, but the teacher did not take action quickly, such that the child was almost getting ready to drink before somebody stopped. So some questions that should be coming to your mind is, how did David have access to chemical in the school lab? How? Was it that there was no system for children to move in and out of a lab that has dangerous substances? So these are some of the issues. And then when the child has taken something that is dangerous and is moving it from one location to another, is it that there is no supervision, there is no system in place? What exactly is going on in that school? And then a child now finds out that something like this is about to happen and reports to a teacher, and then nothing has happened. So is your school safety savvy? If a regulator showed up today in your school, would your school tick off all the boxes? Because the truth is, whenever they come, they have a checklist. So would you even know what is on that checklist? If a child got injured today in your school or got molested, would you or your staff know the next steps to take? Because many times we wait for bad things to happen and then we begin to run all around the place. How about we have a system so that if so and so happens, this is the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 that should be taken. Is it available? Has it been communicated? Are people aware that it exists? Or is just in one folder somewhere in the office gathering dust? If a parent brought a bullying complaint to the school, is there an approved procedure for how that can be managed? Bearing in mind that sometimes a child might even be afraid to tell a teacher, but maybe they have a beautiful relationship with their parents and they can have that communication. So when the parents come, what are you going to do? Also, just imagine that your school is in this community where we have some youths around the corner who always smoke somewhere around the school gate. What should be your next step? If a visitor also shows up in that school and assaults your teacher, what should you do? So if you notice, I have asked questions about procedures from the regulator point of view. I have asked questions about what you're going to do for the child. I've asked a question from the angle of a parent. I've asked a question based on what can be happening around your school and also about visitors. And why is this important? Because a safe school comprises of everything. A safe school is a learning environment that protects the protection of learners, the students, staff, both teachers and non-teaching staff, and visitors. Yes, anybody that comes through your gate becomes your responsibility. If they enter your gate and they fall down, they break their leg, and they're able to give a case in court of how there was a pavement that was not properly done, and that was why they fell, you could actually be sued. Yeah. So, and visitors through training, systems, and processes. So again, a safe school is a learning environment that promotes the protection of learners, staff, and visitors through training, systems, and processes. And that's my own definition, because after doing this for a bit, I just thought, okay, how do we couch all this together in a way that, makes meaning to everyone involved? So there are 4 SMS components, and SMS is safety management system. The first is a safety policy. Barrister Kilami talked about this. A safety policy is a commitment of management to ensure that everybody who comes within their space is safe. So it's not enough for a school to just come and say, oh, yes, we are committed to having a safe school. No, there has to be a policy, a written document that says that this is who we are, this is what we stand for, and this is what we are going to do. Now, it's not enough for you to have the policy. You have to take it to the next step, which is safety risk management, which is how are you going to identify hazards and risk in that environment? What are the things you are going to put in place to ensure that if any of this risk or hazard shows up, we can manage it. So that is safety risk management, because you have to go from policy, then you do your risk management, and then you now move to safety assurance, which is like a review, an evaluation of what you have put together. So let's say you've done your policy, you've done your plans for your safety risk management. At the end of a school year, or say maybe at the end of a quarter, do you have a system where you are going to check and say, what did we do well and what didn't we do well? What worked and what didn't work? That is what you're going to be doing under safety assurance. And then of course, safety promotion. You have to boost and maintain a positive safety culture through trainings and communication. So you can see that it syncs with what Barrister Kinlami shared earlier about policy, processes, and training. You have to have the overarching policy. Then you have to have standard operating procedures and processes that details how things are going to be done when certain things happen. And then you have to communicate, share, train people. You don't expect that because you have said it and so shall it be. No, you're going to say it over and over and over and over again. So this brings me to the 4 pillars of the NFSS-VFS. And what is that? That is the National Policy on Safety, Security, and Violence-Free Schools that the government of Nigeria has created. This document is actually available. I'm going to share the links with Raquel so that everybody that is on this, that has attended this event would have access to it. This document was created for you. During the pandemic in 2020, myself and a group of people from different parastatals were called together to look through the document that had been created, find out loopholes and see how we can strengthen it. And the corrections and everything from that session was imputed in this document. So we actually have a school safety policy in our country, and it is based on 4 major pillars. The first pillar there being safe learning facilities, the structure, the environment. How can we ensure that it is safe? The second is prevention and response to violence against children in schools. So what process do you have in place to ensure that none of this is going to happen to the children? Because see, God forbid is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. You've got to actually put systems, structures, and procedures in place. And then pillar 3, school disaster management. Anyone heard about the flood that has happened all over the world? So what have you put in place to ensure that there is an early warning system? Was it a case that there was nothing in place and children came to school and there was flood? No, it should have been that there should have been some detection before that flood actually happened, so that on that day, children are not coming to school. So somebody might say, oh, it's a natural disaster. Yes, even natural disasters, when you put systems in place, you can pick up when they're about to happen. That's why it's called an early warning system. Before these things happen, signs, and the information is usually shared. The thing now is, are people actually taking action when an early detection signal has gone off? And then pillar 4 is risk and resilience of education. How can we ensure that even when bad things happen, we're able to bounce back and our children are able to go back to school? The second important document which was created is the Safe Schools Common Approach. And this is just like minimum standard, like it is the minimum. Every school in Nigeria, minimum, this is what you should be operating on. So you have the policy, and now you have been given minimum standards. Also, I'll be sharing the link to this document because this document was created for you. It was done with the federal government's money. It's for you. It's for all of us. And we need to share it to as many people as possible. I have shared about it, and I will keep talking about it because we still have educators who are not even aware that this document exists. And the reason these documents are important is because they also have implementing guidelines. They basically hold you by hand and say, this is what we are going to be checking for. This is what is important. You've got to put it in place. Okay, and so here also in the Safe Schools Common Approach, this 5 buckets are very important: violence against children, natural hazards, conflict, everyday hazard, and a safe school infrastructure. Remember, we have just 30 minutes. I'm trying to breeze through as much as possible in this short time. Okay, so these 5 things are very, very important when you are looking at a safe school. And in this document, the minimum standards gives you some helpful tips and things that you can begin to do, which can help you and cover you across these areas. So what are the important considerations? First thing, institutional commitment to safe learning environments. So you cannot just decide that you want to have a school because there are many children in Nigeria, it's going to bring a lot of money, or your friends have a school, or oh, you're about to retire, you have so much money, you just want to build a school. That is not enough. You must have an institutional commitment to doing it. It is so, so important. Institutional commitment. And what do we mean by that? It means from the leadership, there are certain things you must put in place. Like you need to have your safety policy and implementation guidelines. Thankfully, we have this document from the federal government of Nigeria. All you just need to do is read, pick, and adapt to your school. You've got to have a risk management strategy. And the reason this one is important is because different schools face different risks. If your school is in an area that is prone to flood, the things you need to put in place in terms of risk management is totally different from a school that is in a mountainous region or a school that has maybe militants in the area. Different things. Yes, it's all impacting safety, but different exposure to risk. And so that is why your risk management strategy is important. It's not a copy and paste. Someone, a safety professional, has to work with you and assess your actual school system. What are the likely things that can go wrong here, and help you put those things in place, put the structures that can help you manage them. And then the communication strategy, because if your risk management strategy is different, your communication strategy is different. It depends on the demographic you have in your target audience. I'll give you a quick example. Remember during the COVID-19 pandemic was still in it, right? But in 2020, particularly when people had to go back to school, but somehow there was this remote learning going on. Remember that some schools were trying to use Microsoft Teams. Some people were trying to use Google Classroom. Some people were using Telegram. Some people were using WhatsApp, and WhatsApp worked perfectly for them. So you don't just come and say, oh, because everybody is using Google Classroom, you're going to Google Classroom. If your target audience, your demographic are not on Google Classroom, what are you going to do? So a communication strategy must take into cognizance the target audience. Who are the people that you are trying to get their attention? Also, school safety focal point teacher, school safety and security committee, and it also tells you who are those that should be there. Don't worry, everything I'm telling you, it's in the policy document. That's why you should read it. I mean, we're all educators, right? So we should be reading everything. It's very important. Then your emergency response plan, very, very important. Standard operating procedures. Now, I'll go back to emergency response plan. Again, it is not enough to say, God forbid, it's not my portion. So I have a trip next week, right? And I'm going to another continent. And one of the requirements when I went to submit for the visa was, you have to have an insurance plan of so and so amounts. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going there for a few days. But because anything can happen, you don't just take chances. You have to be willing to put the structures in place so that if anything goes wrong, not be like, oh, wow, we didn't want it to happen, but it happened. You've got to put the structures in place. So God forbid is not going to cut it. Yes, you can God forbid, but still put the systems in place. That God will really forbid it when it's time for it to happen, okay? So you have to have an emergency response plan, standard operating procedures, and independent reporting system. Many things are going wrong in schools, but the reason you're not hearing about it is because people are afraid to talk. They know that when they talk, they're going to get victimized. Now, as the institution, a school owner, school leadership, how can you ensure that there is an independent reporting system so that people can say what is going on and it can help you make the necessary change? And then, of course, it's important that you develop the right relationship with the different health and safety organizations and parastatals, just so that you have access to these services when you need them. It's not the day that something has happened to a child, you're not looking around, what is the nearest hospital? No, a hospital around your school should know you. They should know that they are going to be your first call when whatever happens in school is beyond your sick bay and your first aid kit. So that is why it is an institutional commitment. It is a commitment from the leadership to say, we are in this for the long haul. We want to ensure that every child that comes through is safe. Next is capacity building of both staff and learners. Notice that I keep saying staff and I'm not saying teachers, because everybody that comes within your school premises to work for you, you are responsible for them. And if you're not responsible for them, they will become a weak link and affect the safety system you have curated in your school. So your cleaners can become your problem. Your drivers can become your problem. Your security personnel can become your problem if they are not trained properly. So it's not enough for you to just say, oh, we have trained the teachers, oh, we have trained the children. No, no, no. Every staff must be carried along. So you have to have a system, a calendar, periodic training of your staff and learners. So how do we want to do it for children? Do you want to use my child safety storybook and maybe teach them 1 chapter per week, or maybe every 2 weeks? How do you want to do that? Do you want to maybe have weekly or quarterly trainings for the teacher so that your teachers know what is expected of them? Do you want to have maybe like a monthly training for your security personnel so that they know how to grant access to people who are coming into the school environment? You've got to think about these things and put them in place. And then you must provide relevant training resources, provide equipment and tools, because it's not enough to just talk with your mouth. You have to give people something that they can refer to over and over again. So capacity building, very important. You do your institutional commitment, then capacity building. What else? A safety monitoring system. This is super important. I already mentioned it earlier, but this is giving you now a little breakdown. You must have effective risk assessments. You have done something for a whole term. How have you checked? Did it work? Did you do well? What did not work well? How can you change it to be better for next term? It is super important. The fact that something has always worked does not mean to continue to work. In fact, the pandemic has shown that systems have changed a bit. So if you keep on doing things the way it was pre-2020, then you are going to be in for trouble very soon. So effective risk assessment, you are checking what is working, what is not working. So you are going to impute periodic inspections and audits, both internal and external. Have a staff who is responsible for doing that on a periodic basis. I keep using periodic because in your own school, you have to decide how regular is periodic. Is it going to be weekly? Is it going to be bi-weekly? Is it going to be monthly or quarterly? Because different schools have different scenarios. So for some people, they are maybe they are really big, and some they are really small. And we cannot just copy and paste what the big school is doing in the small school. It will be too much for them. And then we cannot take what the small school is doing and do it in the big school. It will be inadequate. So context is very, very important when creating a safety plan. So periodic inspections and audits, and of course, adequate documentation and data evaluation. You must have a record of all these things so that you can check, oh, during first term, this was what happened. By second term, this is what it was. This is what now happened. So what do we think? What is the information that this is throwing up to us? And then you evaluate and you make decisions. Now, one important component of a safety monitoring system is that there must be penalties and rewards. Yeah, and I only put penalties, but rewards too. When people do things well, how are you rewarding that behavior so that more people can emulate it? And when they do not do things well, what are you also doing to ensure that it doesn't happen again? Penalties. Otherwise, if there is no penalty, what happens is people will say, well, nothing would happen, and they will go on and do that same thing. But if people can see clearly that there is a strict penalty, it helps put expectations in place and causes everybody to do what they are supposed to do. Preventing violence against children. So here you've got to have training for your staff and for your learners on what is expected and what is not expected. Most especially for preventing violence against children, it's not only your staff and the learners that are involved. There are other stakeholders, such as parents. So it's very important that you identify who are going to be the stakeholders for this, and how can you ensure that you keep on sharing information. I know schools who do newsletters on a monthly basis, teaching on an aspect of child safety so that their parents are carried along and they know what to do to ensure that children in their care are safe. So you've got to have standard operating procedures and a code of conduct. Very important. You also have to have an independent system of reporting. If a child has been hurt, does the child know who they should be speaking to? If a staff has also been hurt, does the staff know who they should be speaking to? Is there something going on maybe within the classroom? Maybe there's some violence that a child is exhibiting, and it is obvious that this is coming from something happening at home, and the teacher has picked this up. Is there a system for that staff to communicate this to management and what management can do? standard procedure again for penalties, and you should have counseling and psychosocial services. So like the example of the child I just gave, if you can see clearly that there is something going on at home that is affecting this child, what can we do to ensure that we help the child in our own little way? Can the child have access to counseling and some support so that they know that somebody cares about them and is looking out for them? Another important consideration is disaster management. And I just told you about the flood that happened. You've got to have an early warning system in place. You've got to have an emergency response plan. You've got to have evacuation routes. It's always better if the students are not in school when it happens, but just in case they are in school when it happens, what is the evacuation route? Are they aware? Do they know how to act? So I think last month, my school sent an alert. So I'm currently at NYU, and we have a warning system. If something is going wrong somewhere in the city around us, we get text messages, we get an email saying, alert, so and so is happening, do this and do that. So last month, we got one that said, a shooter, gunman, shooter is somewhere. If something happens, run, either run something or fight. Yes, it was 3 words. You know how when I teach children, we say go down low when there is a smoke-filled building. It was 3 words to run. I can't remember the second one, and the last option was fight. And because that is actually standard protocol in the US for when a gunman, a shooter, is in the environment. Oh yes, run, hide, fight. Your first instinct you're supposed to do is run and hide somewhere, because you're not supposed to be trying to form macho, right? Run and hide. But peradventure, this gunman now faces you where you are hiding. You've got to fight. So you can see run, hide, fight. 3 simple words that everybody can remember and take action in an emergency. It has been drummed into the minds of students in this country. Everybody knows when there is a shooter, run, hide, fight. And I remember in the African WhatsApp group, it caused some, that was quite scary. But because I had done this for a bit, I understood why they would say that, because nobody knows what can happen. You just have to plan. You hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. That's it. And that's the idea we should have when it comes to disaster management. Training of all stakeholders, and of course, relationship with relevant emergency services. So a fire has broken out in your school. Do you even know the number to call for the fire service to come to your school? Have you established a relationship with the closest one in your school's vicinity to say, we are here, oh, in case something happens, this is where you should be coming to. You've got to build those relationships. Then security of school. So I know I got this medieval tower and gates, but basically what we're talking about here is perimeter fencing. The first line of defense of a school is that perimeter fencing. So your gates and your fence is very important. It shouldn't be that anybody can just walk through your school from one end to the other. They're following shortcuts. Hello, I don't understand. What is going on? That's how they'll come and pick somebody's child and, go. So it's very important. Perimeter fencing, super important. It must be there. Adequate security personnel who are trained on a regular basis. Standard operating procedures for access control. Who can come in at what time and who can go out at what time, just to ensure that you know who is coming in and going out so that nobody's taking anybody's child. And then, of course, you must have clear exits and muster points to ensure that there is that security architecture within the school. I'm trying to breeze through as quickly again. Health and hygiene, very important. You've got to provide water source. Like water sources are very important in schools. These children are playing. They are going to the toilet. They're going to put their hands in their mouth. It's very important that we have adequate water sources, that they know we should always wash our hands after doing so and so. Very important. Otherwise, you could have an epidemic, a breakout of a disease in school. So good water sources, monitor food sources. If you are a school that provides food for children, you've got to monitor. If you're not the one providing the food, but you have vendors, what is your system of accrediting those vendors to ensure that they are not bringing disease for your children? Remember, nobody sends their child to school to die. If anybody's child comes and dies in your school, you are going to answer. They will ask you, what was your due diligence? Did you do so and so? And so you've got to be prepared. Also, provision of adequate toilet facilities. I know sometimes people think, this is common sense now, but you need to go to some schools in the rural areas and then you see that they do not have good toilet facilities. And this can actually be a problem because it can affect the health and the hygiene of children in school. It's also very important that you have a functioning health service in your school. So is it a sick bay or is it a first aid box? I always say that depending on the size of your school, it could be a sick bay or a first aid box, because I know some schools are really small. But then there are schools who have the size and can actually have a sick bay. But then remember, you must have established a relationship with the hospital around you so that if it is beyond your first aid box and your sick bay, children can be taken to that hospital. Of course, communicating with the parents too. And of course, adequate training. What else? Safe school infrastructure. So the built environment of a school is also very important when we are saying you want to become a safety service school. How is the environment? Do you have appropriate school furniture? Do you have adequate wash facilities? Do you have your exits? Are they properly lit? Are they blocked? Is it presented in such a way that people don't even know it's an exit? How are your windows? Is it clear? Is there can air come in? Is there cross ventilation in the rooms? How are your corridors? How are your stairs? Is it properly lit? I think it was in 2019 or early 2020, I can't remember now, where a stampede happened in a Kenyan school and students started to run and on the stairs and it was a mess. Children died. When they went to investigation, the whole way that stairwell was built was a problem, and then it was not properly lit. So let's not take things like lighting for granted. Have an environment that brings in some greenery and lots of light into the environment just so that it is safe. You know, schools that have dark corners actually have a higher potential for children to be bullied more than schools with wide open spaces. Because if it is wide and open, the bully will be looking for where to hide and do his bad stuff. But if there are some corners, shady corners, that's where they will drag that child to and bully the child. So the built environment is very important. You've got to have safe playgrounds, adequate lighting, and electrical wiring. So tying this up, because I think our next speaker should be in the room. What are you currently doing in your school to ensure that it is safe? What will you stop doing? Because based on the things I have shared now, you can see that this is a problem. And what will you start or strengthen? These are the three important questions that you should begin to consider. So a safe school is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to be willing to keep learning, keep growing, keep evaluating, keep changing things. And as you keep doing all this, you will see that your school becomes a safe place for all the children that come there. So thank you so much for listening to me. You can see on the screen our Child Safety Storybook. You can see our game app. Feel free to check the App Store for the game app. Feel free to check our website, www.thesafetychick.com, for our books, or if you're outside Nigeria, it's also available on Amazon. Thank you so much for listening, and I will stop sharing now. Over to you, the host.
Thank you so much, Ugochi, for that enlightening session. Very detailed, very enlightening. I learned so much. I don't have a school, but I even know things to look out for when picking out a school. A lot of the things that you said just resonate and are things that we must pay attention to. I can see even the comments are just, everybody's learning. Speaking of time and knowledge, very important. When you said that, it just stood out for me, time and knowledge. If you have the knowledge, you don't have the time, it's a waste. If you have the time, you don't have the knowledge, it's an absolute waste. You talked about schools working with safety professionals, especially in this part of the world, we don't really take our time to seek out professionals. We just have one person that can do something that may not be trained and equipped for that. So it's important that schools actually seek out professionals to do these things, because like our first speaker said, every child's worth is, immeasurable. So we must take it seriously. Finding what works for the uniqueness of your school. When you talked about every staff, many times, like you said, we want to think it's only the teachers, but everybody's going to interact with the children. So every staff, the cleaners, the janitors, the security men, everybody is involved. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. It's not enough to just pray and cover our children with the blood of Jesus. It has its place, but we must plan, we must understand evacuation, exits, and all of these things. Thank you so much for the details. Thank you for even the slides and the documents. We look forward to sharing it if it's available. Yeah, I can see the comments. Thank you for that. If you have any questions for Ms. Ugochi, please feel free to share in the comment section and we would give her a few minutes to answer. But before any question comes up, I would just like to ask, as a parent looking to put my child in a school, what are some things? I know I can ask particular questions, but when I'm inspecting a school, for example, what are some particular things I should look out for in the school when I go to inspect it as a parent seeking to put my child in a school, for example?
Okay, so I touched on some of that already in the presentation. It's like, when you go into the school, you can ask them, where is your safety policy? You can ask them, what's your procedure for picking up and dropping off children? You could ask them, so just in case maybe my child experiences bullying, what is the process of, managing that? You could ask them, okay, now this one is not asking, this one is also observation, because the truth is when you are going to check for a school, aside the fact that you're going to ask questions, observe body language when you're asking questions. You can tell when somebody's lying or, the details is not really forthcoming. You can tell, and you can press in a bit more, when you're asking that question. Then observe. So look at the built environment. Is it light? Is it airy? What's the ventilation like? Ask to see a classroom, just observe. And you could ask questions, it looks like the air is not really coming in properly. Or even if they're using ACs, then you can ask, how often is the AC system, the air conditioning system, how often is it cleaned and filtered? Just so that we're not recirculating what we don't know around for the children. Because remember, different children have different immunity levels. And so what may be fine with everybody may not work for your child. And to some extent, as a parent, you should have picked up on some of the signs. So you should be willing to ask those kind of questions. Please, I always ask parents, don't be afraid to be seen as a busybody. You need to talk. Because if something happens to the child, it will now be a case of had I known. So please ask all the questions. Let them even know that this particular parent always asks questions. Yeah, it might seem like wahala to some people, but people whose heads are in the right places and whose hearts are also in the right places will actually see that you are helping them. You are doing them a favor because you are bringing fresh eyes into what they're doing. Because maybe they're not even seeing what is going on, except somebody independent sees and asks those questions. So please don't be afraid to ask. So observe, ask questions, look at the playground, look at how the toys are looking. Are they looking funny? Is the playground cushion? How is the floor? Is it concrete? Is it sand? Is it grass? Are there soft cushions? Those little things here. And then of course you're asking about the procedure. So you ask policies, ask about procedures, give them different scenarios. So if I'm not able to come and pick my child in school, what is the procedure for getting someone else? Just so that you know how it is done. I know a school I went to check on some years ago, and before you send somebody else to pick up your child, you send a picture, you send their name, and you also send your ID. Because they don't want to hear stories. So tomorrow you will not tell them that, oh, it was not me, I did not send. So they had to create their own procedure for that. So it's really important that we're not afraid to ask those questions. So as much as we ask, we also observe. Yeah, so there's many more, right, from the slides, but this is just top of mind.
All right, thank you for those practical points. We have 2 questions from YouTube, from our audience, and then we would let you go. Thank you. It says, are there government policies that mandate schools to have certain safety measures in place to safeguard children?
Yes, there are. That's why they actually created that National School Safety Policy, and then they've created the minimum standards. So it is a minimum. And you know how they normally say ignorance is not an excuse. That is why when events like this come up and I'm invited to speak, I always speak, I always share, because ignorance will not be an excuse. The rules have been set. The thing now is, are educators even bothering to find out? Are they also taking action? So it is so important. These things have been set. Government has played their part. They brought professionals together. Before we had the review in 2020, in March of 2020, they had started some work from 2019. In fact, prior to that, doing research, they went to 5 states in this country. They didn't use the popular state. They went to 5 states, picked out some of the threats to children in school. And then based on that, they curated this policy that, okay, these are the major things we keep seeing across the different locations in this country. And they did north, east, west, and south, just so that nobody will say, oh, they did not check my region. They did all those things and then put all that together, brought professionals from different agencies and said, please look through, what are we missing out? Now, if they have done that and they have curated the document and then we have not read it to take action, if anything goes wrong, believe me, you are going to face the brunt of the law because they have done their part. Now, I know that sometimes it seems that there is a disconnect between what has happened at the top and how it cascades to the bottom, but that is where we all play a role. Today, I am sharing with you. You have the responsibility to also go and share about this to as many people in your community, your friends, your parents, your educators. Write a post about this on social media. I learned this today. I'll ask the educators in your network, are you aware of the school safety policy of Nigeria? Are you aware of the minimum standard? Share them, share it with your network that is in the education space and with parents who maybe are strong in the PTA, because these are the conversations we should be having. It is super important.
All right, thank you. And the last question that is here, I think is also very important. From Eniola Peters, she says, is it important for a school to have a counseling department for the kids, especially kids in the nursery and primary school? And I remember after you shared the case study, Ayomide actually pointed out that David, the child, should be spoken to because, you know, to think of something like that. So is it important?
So again, remember that context is very important when you're trying to create a health and safety solution. You don't just copy and paste. If we mandate that all schools should have, what did you call it again? A counseling department. That might be too heavy for some low-income schools to manage because they are too small. So maybe what those ones can do is have a relationship with a counseling, an organization that provides counseling services, and then maybe that counselor comes in on a periodic basis. So what will usually be advised is, yes, every school must actually have a plan for counseling and psychosocial services. Very important. How that is implemented will vary from school to school. I went to a secondary school in Akwa Ibom called Efforts Comprehensive School. We had a counseling department because we are big. I mean, we are a fair sort of, government school, so that was available, right? But I know that not every school might have an entire department, but there are some schools that can have one counselor. Depending on the size, that can be enough. There are also some schools that cannot even afford to have a counselor, but what they can have is a relationship with an organization that provides counseling services to low-income schools. And then that organization provides a counselor that comes maybe on a monthly basis or maybe a quarterly basis or however that plan is. What is important is the plan should be there. How it is implemented will vary from school to school based on their realities.
Okay, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for this wealth of knowledge that you have shared. I mean, ask and observe. It's better to be the Wahala parent than to hear stories that touch, as they say in this part of the world. And, you pointed out minimum requirements. So, I mean, we should strive to even go above the minimum, do as much as we can. The lives of the children are worthy of maximum care, maximum regulations in place. So thank you again for this detailed session. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that the participants have learned so much. Thank you. And before we move to our next speaker, who is already available, I just want to see us in the comment section. I just want you to let me know one thing that you have picked, something you didn't know before this conference that you now know and will do? So number one, something you didn't know. Number two, you now know. Number three, you will do. So don't tell me something that you know but you may not do. You know, let's hear from you what you're going to take away. One or two things, everybody in the comment section, please just, you know, let us know. It's very important that we don't just come to conferences like this and listen and have all the knowledge that we don't act on. And sometimes it's important to write down action points. There's a way that it helps. So put it in the comment section. Let's hear you. Something that you have learned, that you didn't know, and that you intend to practice. Please let us know in the comments. We're waiting to read you. And then we will move on to our next session, which promises to be equally amazing. I can see that we have been, you know, engaging in the comments, and that's really great. A lot of our audience members putting nuggets that they pick from each speaker in the comments, especially about the case study. That was really interesting and sad. You know, I can see that children shouldn't be allowed access to other kids' foods and drinks. Absolutely. Ayomide that talked about a conversation being had with David. You know, there's some kids that show some behaviors and they should be, you know, spoken with so that we can take appropriate action and safeguard other children. Schools should put measures in place to keep the children safe. Yes, absolutely, they should put measures in place, and not just measures, but measures that are unique to your school. So the measures that a big school would have to put, we have 500, 1,000 students, may be different from the measures a smaller school may take, or the scale of the measures may be different, but it's absolutely important that we do that. Yes, I'm still waiting to see your comments on the things that you have learned, you didn't know, and you will do. But while you do that, I'm going to introduce us to our next speaker, who is already here and pumped and ready to go. Our next speaker is Mr. Chris Chukwunyere. Mr. Chris Chukwunyere. He is a speaker, an author, a family life coach, and a counselor. He's a US certified life coach, marriage mechanic, that's interesting, a mental health first aid practitioner, and a mindfulness coach. He holds a degree in medical laboratory science and a master's in business administration. He is the co-founder and executive director of Inspire World International Foundation, a charity organization that is committed to improving equitable access to healthcare, strengthening health systems, eradicating poverty, and building self-sustaining communities through medical intervention programs, economic empowerment programs, and community development programs. Wow. Talk about people that are making the world a better place because they are doing and contributing, and we have such people amongst us. He is going to be talking to us on becoming a safety savvy parent. I mean, we've gone from safety savvy school and now we're talking to the parents. How can we become safety savvy parents? So please, audience, celebrate and welcome Mr. Chris Chukwunyere. Welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Just to check, can you hear me very well?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Raquel Daniel, my very good sister and friend, for this invitation. You're doing a great job. You're changing lives, you're transforming societies, and we are very proud of you. Thank you, everyone, for joining this amazing conference. It's a beautiful opportunity to learn, to improve, and to become safety savvy. So today we're going to be talking about, or my session, we're going to be talking about the safety savvy parents. Okay, so I can see that it looks like my audio is okay. Can you hear me? How loud is it now?
We can hear you. It's just a bit low. So if you can increase.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So yeah. All right. So yes. So my session today is talk about being a safety savvy parent. Is it okay? Is the volume still low? I naturally have a low voice, so um,
We
it's
can
okay.
hear you. We can
Okay,
hear
great.
you.
All right. So safety savvy, the ability to just be knowledgeable, have good knowledge, good judgment and understanding around safety. But now when it is being done as a parent, around your family, around raising your children, you are termed as a safety savvy parent. So I have 3 boys, and you know what it means to have 3 sons running around in the house, jumping here and there. I had to learn how to ensure that the environment is safe for them, because as they jump and as they run around, one of them have hit his head on the edge of um, one of the console that we have in the house, and the forehead just tore apart, and we had to take him to the hospital to stitch it. So if we had put a safety measure around some of the edges of the things that we had at home at that time, I don't think that our son would experience that type of scar that he has today, or that stitch that he has, today. So it's important that as parents, we are safety conscious. We think about the safety of our children at home, in school, in these environments where they find themselves, with relations that we leave them with, or even with our parents that we leave them with. We need to be thinking about, or we should be conscious about being their safety, and that's why we need to be safety savvy. We need to be conscious. We need to be knowledgeable, have good judgment about what it means to be safety savvy, and also have an understanding about these things. Now, one fundamental thing that we're going to walk around when it comes to being a safety savvy parent is to understand 4 things. I would call them pillars, to being safety savvy. The first thing is preparation. The first is preparation. The second is prevention. The third is mitigation. And the fourth is recovery. The first, preparation. The second, prevention. The third, mitigation. The fourth, recovery. Now, preparation has to do with coming to that place of knowledge about what it means to be safety savvy, what it means to create an environment that is safe for your child. Coming to that level of consciousness, coming to that level of knowledge. So in preparation, it means that you have built capacity to know how to create a safe environment for your child, to know how to protect your child, to know how to ensure that you equip them to also understand what it means to stay safe among people in their environment as well. So what this means is that you need the required skill of a parent who is safety savvy. And so what this means also is that you need to acquire knowledge, you need to acquire skill. And being a parent is is hard work. Let me use that word. It's hard work, and it takes intentionality. And so you cannot be a safety savvy parent if you don't talk about intentional parenting. There is the safety savvy part of preparation that has to do with gaining knowledge. There is the other part that has to do with creating an environment that is safe for the child. And then there is also another part that has to do with instilling the values of safety consciousness, safety savviness in your children or in your child as they grow up. The type of safe environment that you would create for your child who is a toddler is different from the type of safe environment that you create for your child who is a 10-year-old. And the same, is not the same for a child who is a teenager who is 16 years old. For a child who is about 16 years old, you know that that child would always leave home, that child will make friends. So what you need is not just creating that environment, It's about creating that consciousness in them to be able to identify environments that are not safe to them, know what to do in such situations, and know how to leave that place whenever they sense danger. So as a parent, for every phase in your life's child, you need to always be prepared. And preparation entails that you study, that you research, that you read, that you gain knowledge, that you listen to tapes, that you go for seminars around parenting, around, being a safety savvy parent. This conference is one way of preparing yourself. So preparation is very important. Now, the next thing is prevention. Prevention has to do with creating structures and systems around your child to keep them safe. Prevention here entails creating structures and systems around your child to keep them safe. Now, like I said initially, I had, this console that, had a sharp edge, and I didn't really know that it was really sharp until my son was crawling and, hit his head on it. And then, it started bleeding, it cut and it started bleeding. So creating a structure in the environment where he stays requires that I, ensure that those sharp edges are covered with certain leads. If you have an electric socket that is, at their level as a toddler, you know that kids would like to always put their hands into things. That socket does not have to be open. One way to create a structure around it is to ensure that that socket is covered. You don't leave electric sockets or extensions around when you have toddlers at home, when you have children that are crawling around and playing around. So it's important to understand that there is need for you to create structures around and systems around your child to ensure that they are safe, to ensure that no harm comes to them. One of the things that we can also look at is having to have your child, this type of school that they go to, ensuring that the school they go to, there is a system in that school, there's a policy, a safety policy in that school that keeps every child safe. You need to have a fire extinguisher in your house, in your car, around in the place where you live. These are systems and structures that you put in place just in case there is a fire incident. You know that you need a fire extinguisher to put out that fire. Teach your child how to live an environment that is that has caught up with fire. For instance, smoke is lighter than air. So what that means is that whenever there is a fire incident, smoke would always go up. And so it is important to teach your child, in case of fire incidents, they should do what? They should calm down. They should go down and maybe crawl, and look for an exit door where they can leave, if that's possible. So that is a system and structure that you are creating. But then in this case, it's not a tangible system and structure. It is an intangible system and structure in a way of transferring knowledge, safety skills to your child, just in case there is danger, just in case there's a problem, that child would know exactly what to do. Have a safe, a first aid box in your house. That's a system and structure that you need to put in place to ensure that the environment is safe. If you have a nanny or you have a childminder in your house, it's important to ensure that if you have a child who is a toddler or a child who is pretty small, that child needs to be supervised all the time. So a childminder should know that this is the protocol in this house when it comes when it comes to protecting your child. When it comes to protecting your child, it's important that there is always that supervision. Just a minute, like my camera. My webcam has gone off.
Hello, hi, Mr. Chris. Okay, are you back?
Yes. Yes, I'm back.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
Yeah. So you should always have systems and structure that ensures that your child is safe. So that's for prevention, because if you have systems and structures, it helps to protect your child, from any form of danger or any form of harm. And then the next thing is mitigation. Now, it's important to understand something that um, things would happen. Some harm may come to your child. So if that happens, do you have enough knowledge? Do you have enough skill to ensure that there is a mitigative process, to avert or reduce the danger or the harm that has come to that child? Now, let me give an instance. A child probably is running around and puts his or her hand in an electric socket. Now, you seeing that child should not panic to the point that you run to go and just grab your child, because when you do that and there is still electricity and or current that is flowing from the socket to that child, that electricity, that current will also get to you. So you are going to just expose yourself as well to the harm that has come to that child. So, and that's not good. So for you, what you need to do to mitigate the harm, reduce the harm that has come to that child or possibly may want to come to you, is to put off the socket, or put off the source of electricity or source of current around that house. If a child falls into a pool and you as a parent do not know how to swim, jumping into that pool is not a mitigative process. Yes, you want to save that child, which should mitigate the possible harm that would happen to that child. But then it's impossible to understand that if you do not know how to swim, jumping into that pool would not help either, because you might also drown. But then if you know how to swim and then you can jump into that pool and save that child, that's a mitigative process, or that's a mitigative action. Now, why I'm saying this is that sometimes some things would happen, some things would happen. So what we are praying is that whatever it is that actually threatens the safety of your child is not dangerous, too dangerous to harm them, too dangerous to, to hurt them to a point where, the pain is, or the harm is irreparable, or, to the point where the harm is actually irreparable. So, but then when it comes to kids getting injured, kids, hurting themselves, it will happen. Like I said, I have boys, and I encourage them to play. I encourage them to jump. I encourage them to do things, and I don't try to stifle them to express themselves and find out new possibilities in the things that they're doing. Sometimes they may want to jump and their mother will be like, hey, this type of jump, they shouldn't. I'll be like, leave them alone. They can jump, they can hurt themselves, and they would find a way, to understand how to navigate some of those processes, because sometimes it is good for a child's development, but you must ensure that the environment, is safe for them to play, for them to run around, and all of that. So, but then if something happens, you should have that capacity to be able to mitigate, that danger, or to be able to mitigate that pain or that harm, so that it doesn't extend further. So this is really very critical. So if there are skills that you need to learn as a parent, for instance, learn how to swim, for instance, learn how to respond in a fire incident, know how to use a fire extinguisher, just learn some of these skills. It is very, very important, because it helps you to be able to protect your child and mitigate, avert, any danger that would come to them. And then the last of this pillar is recovery. Some things would happen. And when they happen, some may be traumatic. And because they are traumatic, your child needs to recover. You also probably need to recover. And so things like physiotherapy to help the child walk again, things like seeing a therapist, to help deal with the fear or deal with the trauma of what has happened, are also systems around recovery. So recovery could mean so many things, but then it's important to ensure that for whatever thing that has happened to your child, they may have fear, they may have anxiety, they may have certain trauma, that would come up or that may come up as a result of that experience. So it's important to understand that we need as parents to help them heal, to help them get better, to help them rise above that experience. So being supportive is important, letting them know that everything is fine. And sometimes when they are feeling some type of anxiety or some type of fear, you being able to come to their level, kneel at their level, connect with them eyeball to eyeball, hug them and tell them it's going to be all right, pat them at the back to just soothe that situation that they're going through and ensure that you are connecting with them and letting them know that you are there for them, that they are safe with you. These things are actions or processes that helps the recovery process for that child, just in case something has happened and it has triggered some level of trauma, it has triggered some level of pain, or it has triggered something that, causes them to react whenever they see a trigger or something that is connected to that situation. Children who have been burned by fire, would have phobia for fire. They will have phobia for anything that is, that's close to fire. And so at sometimes they may react in a way that is, they probably would have panic attacks. They may have, some level of anxiety. They may cry and all of that. Your ability to always be there for them, to always, comfort them, helps with their recovery process. And if they need a therapist, or if they need a doctor, whatever type of help that they need to help them recover from that process is important. A child may be playing or be hit by a car, and that child has to be in a hospital. That child probably surgery would have to perform on the child. You need to give physiotherapy, and you need to support that child to walk again. Those are recovery processes that a child would need if they are exposed or when they are exposed to harm or to danger. So, like I said, preparation, prevention, mitigation, and recovery. These are the 4 pillars of 4 things that we need to know as safety savvy parents. Now, it's important to be safety conscious, when it comes to dealing with our children. And one important thing we need to know is that being conscious means that we have a mindset or a safety mindset. Having a safety mindset means that the configurations of your mind, when it comes to dealing with your child, has safety as a part of it. And so you are always aware of your environment. It may not just even be in your house. It may be the environment where you take your kid to. Maybe there is this school party and everyone has to be there. When you get to that environment, don't just take your kid, drop your kid, and go and sit down and that's it, or drop your kid and walk away. Ask questions. Look around, walk around that environment. Does this environment have perimeter fence? Does this environment have fire extinguisher? Does this environment have certain systems and structures? First aid box, a nurse or someone, a healthcare worker. Does this environment have things that can actually help, or people that can actually help, just in case there is some form of harm or danger in that environment? Don't just, just drop your child and that's it. Be aware, observe that environment, observe everyone around. just look around, see someone who is not behaving normally. If you see that guy who's walking around, he's not a parent, he's probably not supposed to be around here, and he's just moving around looking suspiciously and all of that. Ask questions, ask the school authority, or ask the people who are in charge of that environment, who is this guy? So you need to be, if you have that mindset, or a safety savvy mind, if you're safety savvy and you have a safety mindset, what it does to you is that it helps you to be aware of your environment. It also helps you to be observant, and also to take action when necessary. It helps you to take action when necessary. So it's important to be safety conscious. I remember when we were trying to change schools for my son, and then we decided to go to a school and just to look around and all of that. And we found out that this is a very good school. They have a reputation, but the particular school that is close to my house wasn't really safe, in the sense that, yes, they had security people at the gate, but if you go inside, it's a large expanse of land. The fences are very low, and then there are high mountains just by the side, after the fence, and then some bushes around, so anybody could come in through that area, and the security men at the gate will just stay at the gate, and they wouldn't know what will happen within that school. So we're not comfortable with that type of arrangement. So as parents, you don't just decide to say, okay, this is where I'm going to take my child to, and that's it. Think about the safety of your child when it comes to the systems and structures these schools, these environments have placed, to protect your child. And so this is really very important. So when you have that mindset, or you have that consciousness, there's a lot of things that you think about, and there are a lot of things that you do properly. Now, let me just talk about a few tips that I think is very useful for parents. One of it is, one safety savvy tip that you need is for you to prioritize your child. Prioritize your child. And when I mean prioritizing your child, hear your child, listen to your child. Your child may not know how to express him or herself, but your child would cry. Your child would be moody, if something is wrong. Your child would not be, exactly excited as he or she used to be. These are body languages. These are nonverbal communications that you should pay attention to. Connect with your child. Listen to your child. This is really very critical, to protecting your child. So prioritizing your child also means that you should learn, to place value on the safety of your child over every other thing that you do. For instance, there are parents who, I know the economic situation of the country is really very hard. And so certain parents go to work or go to work on their business very early in the morning. They don't come back until the child has gone to bed. So they leave their child with, the school, and the child stays in school until maybe 5 or 6 p.m. and then goes home, and then there's a neighbor who takes care of the child for you until you get back late at night or something. It's important to understand that you need to prioritize your child and prioritize the safety of your child, because the more your child is the more your child is left in the hands of these people and institutions, more than the child is left in your hands, the child is more exposed to the possibility of dangers. And so it's important that you prioritize your child. Yes, things could be hard. At this point, you may not have a choice. But what do you do to leave this phase of life that you are to that next phase of your life where you would have enough time for your child? What do you need to do? If you need to acquire more skills, acquire more skills. If you need to go back to school to get a master's, go back to school to get a master's. If you need to change your career path, change your career path. Whatever it is that you need to do to help you have more time for your child is an art of prioritizing your child. spend time with your child every day. Spend time with them at dinner, spend time just talking with them randomly, not the time that you used to do homework with them. Just sitting with them and just talking randomly and just hear how their day went, what they did in school, what they did at home, what they did with the person they were with. Just have those conversations that are not structured. You're just talking with them, because by the time you talk with them, you're listening to them. You may just find out that there is something that you may need to take care of, or there is a system or a structure that you may need to put in place to ensure that you strengthen the fences of their safety or the environments that they are in. So this is very important. Now, the next thing is teach your child how to cross the road. Teach your child how to cross the road. I learned this skill as a child, and one experience that I will never forget in my life was an experience that I would have been hit by a car. I would have actually died. One of the days we were coming back from school. I was in nursery school. I was coming back, and we had our teacher who had like 10 kids, and she was supposed to take us to cross the road. It was just one teacher, 10 children. She couldn't hold everyone. And so I was one of those children that she couldn't hold. And I don't know what came into me. I thought we were ready to cross, and then I just ran through the road. And I heard a very loud screeching car, that was just stepping. The driver was, just suddenly stepped the leg on the brake, and that sound was very loud. My mom was at home, and my mom heard that sound, and she was like, "Oh my."
But it will still be, yeah, but it will still go over that. But hello. Hi, Mr. Chris, we can't hear you anymore. I assume it might be a network issue. So please let's give him a few minutes and trust that it will be resolved and he will be back on. Okay, I think he's back on.
Yes, I'm back. So I had not
Okay.
learned how to cross the road at that time, so I would have just died, and that would have been it. But thank God, I didn't die. Thank God I wasn't hit by that car, but it was a pretty close call. And so that experience made the school to begin to teach us, how to cross the road. And I think that this is a skill that every parent should teach their child. Yes, I know you always take your kid, from home to school, and they are in the car and all of that. But try as much as you can to take them out sometimes, take them on a walk, and just have them walk while you hold their hands and teach them. Recently, my 6-year-old, he's been used to being in the car, taking him to school and all of that. Now, I decided that, what, we need to be doing some walk. And every evening, just do a walk. I allow him just walk. But then while he was walking, the first time he started walking with me and just walking by himself, that he didn't have a consciousness of staying by the side, walking by the side of the street or using the sidewalk. He was just walking in the street. It was an estate. So yeah, there were cars that were not really coming, but he was walking in the middle of the road. And when a car was coming, he would run by the side. And sometimes if it's a bike, he really just had the consciousness of danger to walk by the side. So I had to teach him every day. I was like, you know what? I need to be taking I told my wife, I need to be taking this boy out every day until he learns this skill, until he has consciousness of this. So it's important to teach your children, because if you don't, the day they find themselves outside and alone, they may not know what to do. So that's important. Give your child the tool to prevent bullying. Bullying is something that is out there. We can't deny that. But then equip our children and build them with the capacity to know how to handle bullies. First of all, they need to have a healthy self-esteem, know how to be assertive, know how to ask for help, know how to talk to an older person when they experience bullying. So as parents, these are things that we need to teach them. As safety savvy parents, there are the tangible systems and structures that you need to put in place in the mind of your child and to build a value system that safety is a part of. Now, when it comes to play dates, this is also another tip. When it comes to play dates, uh, one thing that I would encourage is don't send your kids or your children to a place where you don't know their parents or where you really have a relationship with their parents. Ensure that you build relationships with people of similar values, and you know that the type of values or the type of the way that they train their children is also healthy, for your child to be in that environment. Trust the family that you're taking your child to, and also observe. You need to be very observant about the safety measures, systems, and structures that they've put in that house. Observe, learn to teach your children what to do and how to live an environment that they feel safe. When they feel like someone is touching them in an appropriate way, of course, have sex education with them, protect them, teach them what consent means, teach them that we don't keep secrets in this home or in this family, educate them about sex education, about their body, and protect them and encourage them to speak out, so that when they are in an environment where they are touched inappropriately, they would know what to do. They would know, who to go to. And, let them understand that, hey, if you go into an environment or you go to a place and you find a gun in a room, leave that place immediately. Those type of things, the skill to even know how to leave that environment is important. So these are the things that we can actually teach our children. Hiring the right caregivers is important. I can't overemphasize this, because a lot of us have caregivers, a lot of us have nannies that take care of our children, and at some point we need to leave the house, and all of that. It's important to ask the right questions when you're interviewing them, find out where they've worked at before, find out what their family background is, observe their attitude, their experiences, have a background check on them, and ensure that you check all the boxes. Whatever it is that you are looking out for, check all the safety boxes before you hire them, and ensure you even observe them that they are doing the things that they are supposed to do. Have a CCTV camera in your home, or have a simple camera in your home where you can actually watch and observe things when you're not around from your phone. There are other safety tips. As your child is growing, things like seat belt is important. Things like using a car seat for your toddler is important. Things like using a helmet, it is non-negotiable for your child who is skiing, who is skating, who is whatever it is that they're doing, cycling and all of that. Those are protective measures that need to be put in place. So ensure that you teach them how also to develop good judgment, because safety actually comes from a place of awareness, comes from a place of knowledge and good judgment. So they can be able to look at an environment and be like, okay, this is an environment I should actually leave immediately. Even as an adult, if I'm walking in a street, and I learned this from my friend, while in the university, if we are walking in a street, we observe meters ahead what's ahead of us, because of course we had caught boys here and there. So to avoid some of those people obtaining you and people harassing you and all of that, we observe from afar to know the people that are ahead, and to know if we need to walk that path or we should take another direction. It's important to think about safety as you are living as an adult, and also to think about the safety of your children. So being a safety savvy parent is something that we cannot overemphasize. It's important to think about how to get prepared, how to prevent harm, how to mitigate harm, and how to recover from harm if it eventually happens. And these are the several tips that we've just talked about now that I think will be very useful for each and every one of us. So I would stop here and thank you very much for having me. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you so much for that session. I was just taking notes and learning. And, when you spoke about having boys, I'm a boy mom to myself. So, it hit home, seeing the way he plays and all of these things. I took a lot away from your session. But I mean, before I do a little recap of what I took, there's a question from our audience. So I'll just like you to quickly address that. It says, when is it ideal for someone to start preparing to be a safety savvy parent? So just to add a little more context, do you start while you're still single, or do you wait till you become married, or actually wait till you become a parent? Is there a time to start?
The time to start is now. As a single person, you have the best time to start, to become a safety savvy parent. You don't have to wait until you're married, because it's knowledge. You need to keep acquiring them, because when you are fully equipped, or when you are equipped, in fact, you can't be fully equipped, because for every phase there's a new thing, and you need to update your knowledge level, as a parent. So the type of safety savviness that you have, sorry, excuse me. So being safety savvy for a 5-year-old is different from being safety savvy for a 16-year-old. So you need to keep updating. So the time is now.
Thank you. The time is now. The time is now. So whether you're single, married, already a parent, however old your child is, the time to start or to continue preparing is now. Like I said, I was just taking notes. So many things that you said. We must prepare ourselves to be safety savvy parents. I was having a discussion this week, and I was just saying, before most people marry, you have some form of premarital counseling or whatnot. But we don't have parental counseling or trainings. We just get into marriage and have children, and we're supposed to know how to treat them. So this session is so great because it has given us some form of equipment, especially in the aspect of safety for our children. Prevention through structures and systems around your child. Children thrive in structures, some form of structure. So we must incorporate safety structures for our children. You talked about the very important, childminders, nannies, caregivers. We must have a protocol in place, and then we must communicate that protocol to them. This is how we do it in this house. These are the places the children can go. These are the places they must be supervised, and all of that. I talked about allowing our children to develop, to experiment, but within boundaries of safety, which is so important. Another angle to being safety savvy is so that we must be careful, so we don't get to the point where we box our children and then they're not allowed to play, they're not allowed to do anything else because we're trying to be safe. We must allow them some form of experience and development within the right measures. Prioritize your child and listen to them. Thank you so much, Mr. Chris, for your time, for your knowledge. It has been really, really impactful, and we're sure that we would have you another time and listen to you. Yes, so thank you very much. All right. We're still going on. Yes, we have one speaker that's already here. We're excited to hear him, and I'm sure that our audience members are also excited. I hope you're not tired yet. If you need to stretch your legs, please do. If you need a cup of, coffee, tea, depending on the weather where you are, a chilled bottle of drink, please get it, because we still have some learning to do on how to be safety savvy and protect our children. We're going to the session with Mr. Gideon Olanrewaju, and as usual, I will be reading his profile here. As you can see, our organizers have put together people with so much knowledge, like the speakers at this conference. They're not, I wouldn't say men, but you know what I mean. These are people that know what they are talking about. Mr. Gideon Olanrewaju is an educational development practitioner, an EdTech policy researcher, renowned for championing impact-focused interventions, equitable educational opportunities, and sustainable learning outcomes for millions of disadvantaged Nigerian children through innovation, collaboration, and technology. As a proven learning and development professional in foundational learning and skills development, Gideon has over 8 years experience designing, delivering, and evaluating high-impact programs for children and youth within and outside conventional educational systems. He currently serves as the Chief Executive Director of Aid for Rural Education Access Initiative. This is a nonprofit organization impacting over 25,047 beneficiaries across 42 schools in 33 communities across 15 states. Wow. The organization achieves this through quality alternative formal and non-formal educational programs focused on literacy skill development, girls' education, teacher quality, and digital equity. You know, I'm just so encouraged seeing our speakers who are so passionate about getting it right for the children. It just gives us hope to know that the children of this generation are safe because people like our speakers exist. Mr. Gideon will be talking to us on the importance of safeguarding training for non-profits working with children. So he's talking specifically to non-profits working with children, and I'm sure we will all benefit from his session. Thank you so much, Mr. Gideon, for being here. Welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I do not catch your name, but I'm really excited to be here. What's the name?
Bologi Stephen.
Okay, Stevens. I'm really excited for the opportunity that I've been, privileged to, speak to teachers, parents, as well as organizational leaders for this year's Child Development Conference. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Awesome. I'll proceed. So I've been invited to talk about something extremely sensitive and important when it comes to dealing with children or young participants as organizational leaders or as community-based organization. And that is a function of how do we work in communities, in schools, and ensure that we can safeguard the children that we work with as non-profit organizations. Now, the subcategorization of non-profit organizations can come in different forms. We have faith-based organizations, we have community-based organizations, we have normal non-profit organizations, but regardless of the category that you fall into, if you are here and you're an organizational leader, there is a premise that it is important for NGOs or humanitarian bodies to promote safe practice and to, most importantly, protect children from either harm or abuse or exploitation. Now, in creating a background for my talk, I would like to establish that the underlying importance or significance of ensuring that the protection of children is placed at the core of programming has been, enshrined or is governed by a number of international and continental legal instruments and conventions. So beyond the fact that it is, a fundamental human right, or it is a logical thing to do, there are legal instruments or conventions that governs and informs, the need for organizations to ensure that when they work with children, right, they can safeguard and protect them. The Convention on the Rights of Children, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Dakar Framework for Action, the Convention on the Rights of Peoples with Disability, as well as the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for Non-Custodial Measures. All of these instruments that has been put out by global organizations, particularly the United Nations, echo why we as organizational leaders that run NGOs or run CBOs or FBOs must prioritize safeguarding and protection of children. Now, if there is anything I would interpret before going to how and why this safeguarding can be, embedded into our programming as organizations, is to interpret the fundamental basis of what these instruments and conventions are saying. Because, you cannot design a sustainable and inclusive safeguarding and protection policy in your organization to promote the rights of children if you do not understand where they are coming from. So the interpretation of these instruments basically outlines that humanitarian action or community service that we do as NGO is built on 4 basic principles. And these are the principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. Why those may sound technical, simply put, it means that organizations are expected to commit to ensuring that the program that they design and implement at community level or at school level or at any level of implementation are not only safe, but they are unharmful, they are respectful, and they are accountable to all program participants, but most importantly, the children, right? So as NGOs that work with children, we are saddled with that sacred responsibility to place child protection and safety, as well as the promotion of child's right at the center of our program design, planning, and implementation processes. It is a fact that we all recant most time, maybe politically, or maybe within global youth engagement processes, that anything designed for us without us is against us. This same popular phrase also applies to child protection and safeguarding within organizational programming. If you are going to protect the rights of children and safeguard them, it must be about them. So the question that I think should come to the heart of anybody on this call who runs an organization, who works within an organization, either as a pioneer or as a volunteer, is that how can we as organizations ensure that the children we serve are protected against or prevented from any form of harm, be it physical, be it sexual, be it emotional, or neglect or exploitation, or any form of bodily, psychological, or emotional harm. It is important for me to emphasize that the core of the work that we do is the participants, right? However, we must trace the steps of safeguarding those that we serve from the basis of the program we are implementing for them to the end of that program. So there are common rules that govern how we can put together a good child protection and safeguarding strategy as organizations, right? So I'll lay the foundation of what are those basic rules to observe before I go to the 7 critical action points that NGOs here can, imbibe or adopt to ensure that they can have an effective safeguarding system. Going away from the technical bits, let's talk about how we have read in books and watched in news, how either local organizations or even international NGOs have their personnel or staff members abuse or exploit children. We've heard about how peacekeeping troops within the United Nations systems have, committed acts of abominable offenses like rape or sexual assault to children in countries like Mali, the Congo, Angola. I'm even going far away. Let's come back to Nigeria. There are instances, as I highlighted in news, of organizations where staff members have exploited sexually, the children or the victims or beneficiaries that they are serving. Most recently, an organization did a trend on Twitter where they are trying to, support child rights. And it is interesting to know that one of the critical stakeholders that was engaged at the cause of researching about this issue, interestingly, has been culpable and has been arrested previously for sexually molesting some or one of the beneficiaries that they are trying to serve or protect. These and many more instances and examples overemphasizes the need for us as an organization to hold ourselves as an institution of authority within the spaces that we work responsible to ensuring that the rights of children is being respected. And then we can protect and safeguard them as well. So there are 4 major rules that I believe should govern any way organizations, non-profit-based organizations or community-based organizations can go about their safeguarding strategy. The first one is that you need to understand that the first rule of a good child protection strategy is that it is community-led and collectively driven. It is community-led and collectively driven. The organization that I run, Area High, we most time refer to ourselves as a community-based, impact-driven or grassroots organization. We do not dissociate the processes of our work from the realities of the people that we work with. So if you're going to design a safeguarding policy or system that will work and deliver on its mandate to ensure that our beneficiaries are not harmed or subjected to any form of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, it is important that it aligns with the realities, aspirations, and expectations of the communities that we work with, and then collectively driven, because together we can instrumentalize or operationalize such system or strategy that we put in place. So in reiterating that point, a good child protection strategy for an NGO is community-led and collectively driven. The rule number 2 is that at the core of any safeguarding principle that focuses on children is prevention of maltreatment and circumstances that can impair on the health, education, and psychological development of the children. Health, education, and psychological development of the children. You can focus on different things, but your policy must work assiduously to ensure that its mandates or its policy and highlights prevents children's education, health indicators, or psychological development processes to be protected. It is really important. If you're working to provide, let's say, sexual and reproductive health services and education for children in a community, your provision, the provision of your services must not in any way interfere or interrupt the access to educational opportunities or health provisions or other activities that support the sociocultural or psychosocial development of the children. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is that every single action that you take from the beginning of designing, deploying, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating a program must enable all children to have best outcomes. There is no two-way about it. Every single process along the way of driving programmatic interventions within communities must have the best outcomes of children in mind. If it doesn't deliver on the best outcomes for these children, then there is something wrong with your program. And in developing a very solid and effective safeguarding policy, you must at every point in time highlight that everything we do revolves and must result into good and better outcomes for our beneficiaries. The very last one, a strong safeguarding policy must apply to not only the staff, but interns, volunteers, consultants, and even the sponsors or donors. If your sponsor or donor decides to come into a local community or into a school or into a church or into a mosque or into an IDP camp or whatever place you implement your program, your safeguarding policy as well must apply to them. It is not exceptional to any stakeholder. It also applies to your program advisors, to your advisory board, even to your CEO and founder. If you design a safeguarding policy that exempts some individuals, then it is not a good safeguarding policy. I will reiterate 4 major rules that can, that a good safeguarding policy must embody. Number 1, it must be community-led and collectively driven. It must protect maltreatment and also ensure it doesn't impair health, educational, and psychosocial development opportunities for children. Thirdly, all actions of programmatic interventions must deliver best outcomes for the children. And lastly, the safeguarding policy must apply to everybody without exception: staff, interns, volunteers, consultants, donors, funders, partners, everybody. Those are the rules in coming up with a very effective safeguarding policy. But how can we as NGOs, organizations, build an effective safeguarding system? What I highlighted earlier are the rules that govern coming up with one. But how do we operationalize and implement one? There are 7 critical points that I've highlighted. that I believe as an organization today, if you put in place a safeguarding system, it must follow these critical points. The first one is that it's important for you to better understand, children's perspective and experiences through a system that documents and reports incidences. It is interesting that there are 1001, which is figurative, 1001 minutes or moments of actions that happens when NGOs go into communities to implement projects. Because of lack of observation and lack of vigilance, many of these actions are being missed. And these are critical points that cumulatively infers or affect or influences the overall quality and effectiveness of interventions. Most importantly, when it comes to child protection and safeguarding, many organizations do not have an incident reporting system. If your volunteers or your interns go into a community and they encounter something that is out of order in terms of how they engage with a student, with a child, with a parent, with a community stakeholder, how do they report this back to the organization? If this is well documented and reported, it helps to feed into the way that you protect and safeguard the children that are benefiting from such a program. For example, it is a rule that I have in our own organization, according to our own safeguarding policy, that all volunteers, for example, must sign in and out when outreaches are scheduled within children's home. It is also important that the female staff members accompany female children or students on trips, especially when it's far away from home. And there is a register that accounts for the number of female students following a female staff member at the beginning of the trip and at the end of the trip. An effective documentation of some of these processes enable you to take and put in place an incident reporting system that over time can feed strategically into a safeguarding policy that your organization can run with. And it is important that every new organizational member, a new staff that is being recruited that comes on board, understand that this is the way that this is being done. And that is why it is documented in a safeguarding policy. The second thing is there is a need for us to engage children also as actors, right? In education, it is often misconstrued that children or students are just recipients of humanitarian aid or humanitarian commodities, for lack of a better word. Yes, the educational interventions, the school supplies that we provide can be regarded as humanitarian commodities. And we believe over time that they are just sole beneficiaries. What they just need to do is to be passive recipients. But that is not the case if we want to have an effective safeguarding policy that ensures that the interests of the children are at the core of our programming. And how do we ensure this? Is to ensure that we can take concerns that are being raised by children very seriously. Sometimes we go into schools, we go into communities, and because some of these children, they see us as external bodies that comes into their community, they feel that they can talk to us, they can express themselves away from the seclusion or the limitation that they face when it comes to engaging with their immediate, environment. But many a times as nonprofit practitioners, we do neglect those concerns that they can, unmeaningfully express. But a critical component, if we begin to engage children as actors, is when we listen attentively to some of their concerns and aspirations, and we mirror them. Sometimes you go into communities where abuse is actually being, propagated across all levels, from family, to church, to mosque, to schools. And yet, these children could not report to anybody because all the layers of the community already fails them, already exploit or abuse them. But when we come in as external actors. They believe that, oh, these are neutral bodies that can potentially provide solution for our concerns. And that is why it is important that when we listen, we can intervene accordingly and provide solutions to some of these immediate challenges that can even have a negative impact on our home programming as well. So we need to continue to listen to children and engage them as actors. Another way that we can also engage with children as actors is to collectively discuss their rights and also analyze with them what it is considered to be acceptable and unacceptable behaviors. Because it is interesting sometimes that the concept of abuse is being discussed or described through an imbalanced power dynamic structure. And sometimes it is not a function of an older man, a younger female beneficiary. Sometimes abuse is perpetrated in between peers, in between community or friends. And sometimes some of these individuals do not even know that what my friend just said or did to me is harmful or is a form of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. What is important in also engaging children as actors is sometimes we provide a safe space and inclusive environment for them to discuss and describe some of the things that happens, and we can pinpoint from the space of expertise and experience what we can designate as wrong, right, acceptable, and unacceptable behavior. Moving on, the third point, the third critical point is we need to work in a more inclusive manner. Work in a more inclusive manner. There is a way that over time, organizations work and woes into communities, and what they have done is to portray the idea that we are here to save you. There's this savior complex that we portray without the usual community immersion or community entry processes. It is important that we listen over time to understand what has happened previously when organizations come into some of these schools and communities to work. Is there an historic precedence of sexual, emotional abuse or harm in any way? And is there a structure that the communities or schools or institutions themselves are put in place to prevent this? And how can we complement or augment to ensure that we can work together in a manner that the rights and the safety of children is being protected? That is the point around working in a more inclusive manner, bringing on board every single stakeholder, because that is what would inform the way you deploy your safeguarding policy in such an environment. What we have continually do at Area High is that the operationalization of our safeguarding policy is context specific. It is not the same interpretation we give to it. For example, we work in IDP camps, right? We have a project that is currently ongoing in 6 IDP camps. And the way that we introduce and implement or observe the statutory policies and actions in our safeguarding policy differs across these camps. And that is the hallmark of an effective safeguarding system, because the inclusivity of the process means that you have different stakeholders working across some of these camps. You cannot engage them in similar ways because their realities and circumstances are different. And in some way, the way that we deploy and now protect the children is based on things that have previously happened within those camps. That is why it is important to work in an inclusive manner. Running off 4 more points and I'm out of your face. Support children's best interest. Support children's best interest. It is important, and I think I'll give this as a very quick example, which is the idea of what we have continually seen in the way that organizations take pictures and put pictures that portrays poverty, suffering, sorrow, sadness, darkness. There's a lot of what to describe that, right? And it is very, very interesting to see that a lot of people has ensured that the portrayal of children is manipulated or done in a sensational way that affects the emotional status of these children. Remember, it is not about physical harm alone, because safeguarding and promotion of rights extends beyond abuse and harm, even more into exploitation. The way some pictures are being taken to portray the state of some of our beneficiaries is nothing to write home about. And that is why it is important that in supporting the best interest of these children, it is important we provide a balanced depiction of their lives and circumstances. And trust me, just Google Area High online and check through our medias. It is a practice we have imbibed over the years that we will only tell the best stories out of the communities that we work with, because as Chimamanda said, the danger of a single story, when we take, and you may wonder how these tend to connect with safeguarding and safety, but there is 1,001 ways it is connected. If you depict children in a certain way, in a particular community that you've worked over time, and some of your outsiders, your key stakeholders like funders or sponsors come, there is a perceptive image that is already established in their head as regards the emotional, psychological, or physical status of these beneficiaries, which might not, indeed represent them. And that is why one of the ways of ensuring that you show the best part of people's life is through your photography and your videography. And more practically, will be using media consent forms. It is important for Area High right now, for example, any community we go to. Days ago, we completed a program that had about 300 girls across 10 schools in the FCT engaged in a digital skills program. We ensured that before we photographed any of these girls, each of them gave us, even though many of them are below the age of 18, they can be regarded as minors, but we still took it upon ourselves as a point of responsibility towards towing the line of safeguarding that they can provide consent in signing a media release form. Do not put out either a good, quote and unquote, or bad image of a beneficiary out there without taking consent of release. That is one of the very practicable way of ensuring that you can put the best interest of these children at the core of your program. 3 more points. Connect with the former children protection system. So what do I mean by this? As I've mentioned, in schools and communities, many of them already have stipulated child protection system. For example, in Lagos, there is a body, I think it's called the DSTVR or something. I've forgotten the full meaning, which is a body that all sexually related offenses are being reported to. So let's say, for example, you're trying to work in Lagos right now, and let's say you are trying to prevent and ensure that female beneficiaries between the ages of 15 and 18 or 15 to 20 within secondary schools do not experience sexual abuse and exploitation. It is important to align your system to work with that is, for example, the DSTVR, who is actually responsible for prevention of sexual related offenses in Lagos State, works with. So what I'm trying to say is that in new environments that an organization would work in, there is every tendency that there is a body or an institution that takes charge or coordinates processes and actions of safeguarding and safety. It is important for you to embed your own policy into them to ensure that it is rightly done and implemented. The second to the last point, which is the 6th critical point, is empower your personnel to act in the best interests. I cannot overemphasize, over-explain the relevance of this. Area High currently have 22 staff members, and each of these staff members, and I will continue to use Area High as a reference point because that's where I work. Those are the people that I work with, and I understand, the work we do in terms of safeguarding, and I think it's just the perfect example to use. Every single member of the team understands that on the field, for example, nobody takes a selfie with any student or any child in a camp or in a community. You can never see it happen. There is an official photographer that has been brought on a mission or on an outreach during a program implementation. Let them do their job. Remember, sexual, emotional, physical harm, abuse, or exploitation serves as the fulcrum of anything safety, child rights. When you begin to take, and most times these organizations, their staff members or their volunteers begin to take selfies with almost naked beneficiaries. And it is despicable sometimes that these people have the audacity to actually write very glossy, flowery comments and captions about their experiences that do not even represent, the state of these people. So when I say empower personate to act in best interest, I'm taking it from the layer of there are so many things that organizational members that you bring on board to work in your organization or volunteer in your organization need to understand about the practices and principles that you put in place in your organization. Many at times will be, how do you handle incidences that involves a student or children reporting to you? How do you compel them to cooperate and act confidently in any form of investigation of concerns or allegations? There are so many levels to how and why staff members need to be trained on how they can ensure that every word that is said, every action that is, that is taken, every word that is uttered, every correspondence that is received aligns strategically to ensuring that no harm is meant, no abuse is perpetuated, no exploitation is condoned. It is really important. So beyond just having an effective safeguarding policy that is operational at organizational level, it is important to also conduct trainings periodically. Perhaps our organization, for example, we have 2 staff retreats every year. And a part of this retreat that happens twice every year is dedicated to ensuring that we can reiterate and re-emphasize the need for our staff to conduct themselves in a way that the right of the children that they are working with is protected. You cannot initiate sexual relations or romantic affairs with secondary school students that you're working with. Yes, love can happen to anybody, but not in it. You are. I mean, that's a very funny example, but I think it is not a funny affair. You are subjected or subjective to criminal law if you engage in such practices. There's so many examples and reasons why it is important that such trainings are actually being conducted. Now, on a final note, I've implied, but I've not said it directly, since I started. But the last one is that there is a need for you to develop an evidence-based and practical child protection policy with safeguarding minimum standards and clear protocol, right? It is important. I will repeat that and I will not explain. I want you to, if you're on call, you run an organization, you work with one, please just Google safeguarding minimum standards. Safeguarding minimum standard. It is important that you develop an evidence-based and practical child protection policy that has very clear safeguarding minimum standards and clear protocol. Thank you so much once again, Raquel Daniels, for putting this together. I'm really excited to be here. And in case there are any questions for me on things that I've shared on this call today, I would welcome them. Thank you very much. And I do wish us a very successful Child Development Conference. Over.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gideon, for that session. Just give me a minute. I'm trying to connect something
Most
over
welcome.
here. All right. Please, if you have any question for Mr. Gideon, we still have him here. Let's get from him. Please put it in the comment section, and then we can get his perspective on that. Any questions that you have, and we will ask him shortly. All right, so if you have any questions, please put in comments. Yes, truly it was a brilliant session. So much wisdom, so much enlightenment. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for this powerful session. I'm seeing a lot of feedback from our audience. thanking you for your time and for the wisdom and the information that you have shared. I have a question here that says, does not having a safety policy for children affect a non-profit working with children from getting grants? So in order to get grants, do you have to have a safety policy for children?
Yes, it does. It does. And the goal of anybody that runs an organization is that you want to scale the impact of your work and amplify the reach of your organization. You don't want to do 100, 200. You want to do 50,000, 100,000. And with 100,000 children or beneficiaries, there's a need for a larger, pool of funding. I will categorically state that some international partners and donors, a huge example would be the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, for example, will conduct something, and most big donors conduct something called due diligence, right? In the process of conducting that due diligence, before they establish if you are grant worthy, is for you to submit a number of policies, right, and documents. I can categorically tell you right now that are about 15 or more different kind of policies that your organization must have. You also don't want to play on the local level. You want to show global standard. If you go online right now, just type Site Saver Safeguarding Policy, UNICEF Safeguarding Policy, CARE International Safeguarding Policy. Almost all organizations that work within humanitarian action and community service is expected to have that. You're supposed to have a sexual assault reporting policy. You're supposed to have value for money analysis policy. You're supposed to have whistleblower policy, right? You're supposed to have a gender equality in the workplace policy. Quite a number of that you should have. So I would say with the final line that indeed it can limit your opportunities with big organizations to receive financial support if your organization do not have. And let me now make you, on a final note, interestingly, having and developing a safeguarding policy, as I've told and shared on this call, is not very difficult. Your safeguarding policy can just be 10 pages, but it must align with the realities and aspirations of the spaces where you work. So if you're on this call, you don't have one, go online today. What are those organizations that share the same, programmatic similarities with your own organization? Find their safeguarding policy and try to adapt, not adopt, adapt. The adaptation means that you can integrate some of the realities of the beneficiaries that you work with in schools, communities, and across different spaces and environments into that policy so that it fits and reflects the realities of your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer. Indeed, we shouldn't play local. The fact that there are minimum standards does not mean we should be comfortable staying in the minimum. We should get global standards and adapt them, make them suitable for our own organization. Every organization, no matter how similar they may seem, they have their uniqueness. So adapt policies. So many things that you said, resonated with me, and given the rules of a great safeguarding policy, because it's not enough to just say get a safeguarding policy. We must understand what a safeguarding policy should entail, what it must look like, what it must achieve, so that we're not in the name of getting a safeguarding policy, just getting some form of material or document that is basically useless. So, not impairing health education, must apply to everyone without exception, which was kind of related to what we learned when they were talking about safety service schools, not just the teachers, but everyone involved. So in this case, even your donors, your partners, everyone should be involved, because we're building a community of safety savvy individuals for the benefit of these children. We must listen and engage children as actors and discuss with them. That was so critical for me, because we're doing this for the children. So it mustn't just be a bunch of adults having conversation about them. We must also engage them. There are some things that we may assume from when we were children, and then when we listen to the children of these days, they're going through their own experiences. Thank you so much, Mr. Gideon, for this session. It was truly enlightening. I'm sure a lot of us have learned things, whether you're actively in the nonprofit space or you're volunteering with somebody or something. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the information and the knowledge shared. We truly, truly appreciate you. All right, so this has been such an amazing time. So much wisdom, so much knowledge, so much information has gone out. And I'm sure that living here as a more informed adult, you also are doing the same, whether as parents, whether as teachers, school owners, or guardians. And as we wind down, we cannot close without hearing from our project manager. She has been behind the scenes, putting a lot of things in place, and she would be giving us the closing remark for this conference. I'm super excited because, like I said, she works behind the scenes to make sure everything goes well and manages all the projects well. So please, ladies and gentlemen, as we wind down, welcome with me Eniola Peters, project manager, for the closing remark.
Thank you, Mrs. Bologi Stephen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been such an amazing time at this conference. I am Eniola Peters, the project manager of the Safety Savvy Project, and it's indeed my pleasure to make these closing remarks. As we close, I'd like to say a big thank you to the Beyond the Classroom Foundation and Mrs. Raquel Kasham Daniel for putting together this informative and educative conference on child development. Indeed, the need to educate both parents, teachers, and guardians on safeguarding and child protection cannot be overemphasized. A very big thank you to MasterCard Foundation for partnering with us to bring the awareness to the public. It is one thing, to have a beneficial vision, and another thing to find organizations that see what you're doing and are ready to partner with that vision. Thank you, MasterCard Foundation. Without you, we wouldn't have done this conference. And to our guest speakers, we cannot thank you enough. Mr. Taiwo Akinlami, Ms. Ugochi Obidiegu, Mr. Chris Chukwunyere, and Mr. Gideon Olarewaju. We all have benefited from your wealth of knowledge, and we leave here equipped to be better parents, teachers, and guardians because of you. Thank you. We truly appreciate you, and we hope that you graciously oblige us next time we come calling. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. What is an event without a competent host? I mean, you all can testify that we had the best host today. Mrs. Bologi Stephen, our sincere gratitude to you for holding the conference down from top to bottom. Oh, wow. Transitioning us well from one activity and speaker to the next. We appreciate you, and we hope the next time we call you, you're going to come again because your work is magical. And to all our virtual participants, our volunteers, and everyone who has participated in this conference to make it a success, we say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been a valuable, knowledge sharing, and impactful meeting, and we look forward to more of its kind. Now, let's all go and be safety savvy individuals wherever we find ourselves. I am proud to say I'm a safety savvy parent. What about you? Thank you.
Thank you very much to our project manager, Eniola Peters, for that closing remark. All right, we've come to the end of this conference. I don't know how many times I've used the word enlightening, but honestly, that's what this conference has been for me. If you don't mind, before you log out, just use one word to tell us what this conference has been for you. And as we close, this conference will be on this page. So feel free to share it with someone. They may not have been able to join us live, but they can still benefit from this conference. So please, please, please make sure you share this conference with someone, a parent, a teacher, a school owner, or any guardian, so that the more safety savvy adults we have, the safer our children will be. Till we come your way next year, this is the Child Development Conference. I'm your host, Bologi Stephen. And don't forget, before you log out, please use a word to describe your experience at this conference. Thank you and see you next year.